across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning. Blimey, it's early. 2 minutes past 6, Saturday breakfast. This is Talk. It's the home of common sense. I'm Duncan Barkes in for Mark Dolan through until 10 o'clock this morning. Good to have you along at this very early hour. You want to get involved in anything you hear, 0344 499 1000. Ton of stuff going on this morning. We'll go through the front pages of the newspapers in a few moments' time. My guest this hour is Neil Wallace, former editor of the News of the World. We'll get Neil's reaction to some of the big stories this morning. But what's also important is your thoughts, your views, and where you think we are heading politically in the United Kingdom. 0344 499 1000. Use that number for your calls, your WhatsApps and your voice notes. Now, it is early. OK, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm on my second espresso. There'll be another 2 in my gullet between now and at least 7 o'clock this morning. And I accept that talking coherently at this hour is a bit of a challenge. So I will accept your WhatsApp messages, all right? But if you want to come on and we can chew the cud this morning, 0344 499 1000. And of course, if you've got a battered old Nokia somewhere and you're a little bit old school, I've got a drawer at home that's full of old mobile phones. You can text us. Do you remember texting? 87222 is the text number. You start your message with the word talk. Front pages of the newspapers this morning, very quickly. Front page of the Weekend. Something we'll talk about as the show continues. Burnham bounce. Labour leapfrogs. Farage in polls after he loses voters to Restore. Now, this is off the back of a by-election that took place on Thursday for a seat on Dover District Council, and there's a lot of stuff flying around at the moment. This idea that Restore Britain, which is Rupert Lowe's political party, you all know Rupert Lowe used to be a Reform UK MP, fell out with Farage, went away, set up an organisation called Restore Britain, originally as a movement, now as a political party, and people are going, if you look at what happened in Dover, Restore Britain took 10% of the vote, and if they hadn't done that, Reform would have won a seat on Dover District Council. What is interesting about Dover, this particular seat is exactly in the place where the illegal migrants are arriving, literally on a daily basis. Who won it? The Green Party. And people are saying, well, if Restore Britain hadn't stood, Reform might have got that seat. Anyway, that's the front page of the Elsewhere, the FT Weekend, Healey to defer defence spend target. This is our Chancellor, John Healey. You know, this story makes me sick, and I'll tell you why. He used to be Defence Secretary. He said he stood down because he was unhappy with the level of money we were spending on defence, right? And now we discover he's going to shelve his own target of spending 3% of Britain's GDP on defence by 2030, when he stands on his feet to present his first budget on the 28th of October. So I can only conclude that this guy, all of this guff when he was Defence Secretary about, well, you know, I'm not happy to do this job anymore, I'm not getting the money, was purely a political move to get rid of Keir Starmer. You know, these politicians make me sick. That's the front page of the FT. Daily Telegraph for a Saturday morning. America's Falklands threat to Britain. Boost defence spending, or we will withdraw support for sovereignty, says Pentagon. This is a really disturbing story. If you're an older person like me who remembers the Falklands conflict of 1982, and I was a kid at the time, and I live on the south coast of the United Kingdom, in a place called Chichester in West Sussex. Portsmouth, our great naval city, home of the Royal Navy, literally just down the coast, about 10 miles down the coast. I remember the task force sailing out of Pompey Harbour to go down to reclaim the Falklands. So when you read this story, it is disturbing. The United States has threatened to oppose Britain's sovereignty over the Falkland Islands if Andy Burnham does not increase defence spending. So that's a really interesting development if you pair it up with what's on the front page of the FT Weekend this morning. Daily Mirror, King's support for tragic police families. This is about King Charles, who's written to the families of 2 police officers killed in the A66 horror crash. That's the front page of the Mirror. We'll look at the current situation in Middlesbrough a little bit later on. Daily Express for a Saturday morning. Burnham vows to stay out of assisted dying vote. This is our Prime Minister, our relatively new one. You know the one I'm talking about, the one who doesn't really have a mandate. Andy Burnham has pledged not to intervene in the MP's vote on legalising assisted dying. This is being classed as a major boost for campaigners, though bear in mind the Express is very supportive of a campaign to get assisted dying legalised. legalised. Daily Mail for a Saturday. Surrender is the headline. John Healey quit in protest at Starmer's refusal to spend 3% of GDP on defence by 2030. Now, as Chancellor, he shelved the same target just as Putin ramps up threats. That's the Mail's interpretation of that story. The Guardian talks about the tragedy and the disaster in Nepal. Elsewhere, the Times this morning, the Prime Minister warned over stupid tax raid on capital gains. Andy Burnham has been warned by a senior ally that increasing taxes on wealth in the budget would be stupid because it would encourage entrepreneurs to leave the country and damage economic growth. Anyone who really understands economics knows that. What else have we got this morning? The Sun newspaper has a royal story, though it's not about Harry and Meghan. There's another royal returning. Well, she's coming home, according to The Sun, and it's Fergie. I mean, I'm tempted to use the term chickens coming home to roost. Maybe there's something in there about old birds coming home to roost. First Harry and Meg, now Fergie's coming home. She rents a house in the United Kingdom after exile. That's the front page of The Sun. And the Daily Star for a Saturday morning. TV Joey, I still can't tell the time. This is Joey Essex. Do you remember Joey Essex? He was one of the stars in the early days of The Only Way is Essex, who, well, I think is famed for claiming he can't tell the time. See, I don't believe this. I think it's just shtick. He must be able to tell the time, mustn't he? Is Joey Essex still in The Only Way is Essex? He can't be anymore. But the programme's still on the telly, isn't it? Anyway, so he's banging on about the fact that it's 13 years since he told the fellow campers in the I'm a Celebrity camp that he didn't know how to tell the time. Do you believe that? Those are the front pages of this morning's newspapers. It's 8 minutes past 6. I'm Duncan Barkes. This is Talk. It's the home of common sense. You want to pick up on anything you're about to hear, 0344 499 1000. Let's talk to Neil Wallace, former editor of the News of the World. Morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Thank you for coming in at this very early hour. Have you got enough coffee or tea? Have you got all the bits you need?
Yeah, not as much as you're going to get
I'm going to be wired by 7 o'clock. Listen, good to see you, Neil, and thank you for coming in. Let's talk about this political story that I know is of great interest to our viewers and listeners here at Talk. This is a situation that appears to be facing Reform UK. In the form of this relatively new, I mean, infant political party, which is called Restore Britain. And we've got a couple of stories doing the rounds this morning, chiefly the front page of the Weekend that talks about the Burnham bounce, Labour leapfrogs Farage in the polls, and they're saying part of the reason that Reform UK is suffering a little bit is because of the success of Restore Britain. And I mentioned this earlier. The backdrop to this story is a chap called Rupert Lowe, who used to be a Reform UK MP. He fell out with Nigel Farage and he set up his own movement called Restore Britain. There was this teeny-weeny by-election in Dover on Thursday, and there was supposed to be this three-horse race between the Tories, Reform and Restore, and the Green Party candidate won, predominantly because the vote on the right of the political spectrum was split. How much of a threat do you think Restore Britain is?
I think there is a significance to it because as you look at that, the polling they're showing there,
yeah,
Restore are only on 5%. They're never going to matter in terms of they're not going to elect MPs, etc. But that 5%, if you add it to Reform, takes Reform to 28, makes them number one.
Yeah.
That's the significance. They are undermining Farage. They are undermining Reform. And as you quite rightly point out, they are carving a way through for the lunatics of the Greens.
Yeah, I mean...
You know, don't forget, you're talking about Dover, right, the heart of the whole illegal migration scandal.
Yeah.
They believe, Green believe, in unlimited immigration.
No borders.
No borders at all. They would let anybody and everybody in.
Yeah.
It is an absolutely bizarre party. It's an absolutely bizarre idea that they won. But the reason they won is because the right split.
Yeah.
Now, this is about the egos of the people leading on the right.
Yeah.
That Rupert Lowe split because he fell out with Nigel Farage, and they don't really care that they're damaging their own side effectively. This is madness. If you believe that the way forward is not Andy Burnham guitar strumming, making videos about the different pub snacks,
telling people to put the milk in first in his
like
tea.
that. You'll be doing a video soon about whether or not you put the cream on first when you have your scones, or you put the jam on first. Big issues like that. That appears to be where Burnham is desperate not to offend anybody. Right? We need leadership.
We do need leadership, and even worse, if there were to be an election with this split on the right and Burnham didn't get a massive majority, we could end up with some left-wing coalition, not just with Labour, but with the lunatics of the Greens, also a dose of the Lib Dems as well. And frankly, I think that's the end of this country.
Because one of the things they will do straight away, the price that the Lib Dems will demand, for instance, will be proportional representation. That means you lose the first past the post system. That condemns you to a life of coalition governments. Think Italy, think Germany, where they've been absolutely hit by paralysis that is now catching them out.
Do you think there's any possibility, and you used the word egos, and we all know, you and I both know, because we've been around long enough to know that every politician has an ego, right? Yeah. We know that every MP believes they can be Prime Minister and leader of their party.
They believe they should be.
They should be. That's how these people function. And an old Fleet Street hack said to me a while ago, he said, how do you know if a politician's lying, Duncan? Their lips are moving, right? So, I think we're on the same page with all of this. There are egos involved. Well, I don't think we'll ever know what truly happened between Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage. We get inklings of it. We know that Rupert Lowe gave an interview to a national newspaper criticising Nigel Farage. Farage will say, I'm happy to be criticised, but let's have the conversation behind closed doors. Don't do it in public. That's disloyal. And I have sympathy with that view. Do you think there's any possibility that when we talk about reform and restore, that they will ever find a way of working together?
I think it will be very difficult for those two men to bury the hatchet, which is a real pity, because there is a hunger in this country for change, and by hiving off this number of votes, then they're only damaging themselves.
Where do you think Kemi Badenoch sits in all of this?
Well, I think Kemi Badenoch is interesting, actually. I think she has nailed her colours to the mast. She has said she will not go into an alliance with Reform. I'm hoping she's left enough wriggle room, and that at some point she does actually form some sort of link with Farage. The question is, she will have the bigger party. So whether or not Nigel can actually move, shall we say, from being this huge leader who wants to dominate everything, I don't know. I think that's very difficult, and I think it's a big problem for sensible people everywhere when they see the two big beasts of the right refusing to talk to each other.
I think it is problematic. Just so everyone's fully in the loop here, this bit of polling on the front page of the Eye goes as follows. These are the numbers you need to be aware of. They talk about the Burnham bounce. So in this one poll, that's the usual caveat, this is only one poll, but this is what makes the front page of the Eye, and it's worth chewing over this morning. Labour sitting on 27%, Reform UK on 23%, the Conservatives on 18%, the Greens on 11%, Lib Dems on 10%, and Restore Britain on 5%. Let me ask you this question this morning here on Talk, 0344 499 1000. It is predominantly political, this, but I mean, there's wider ramifications. I believe this is about the future of our country. This isn't just about Westminster stuff. This is about where the United Kingdom is going to end up and who's going to run it after the next general election. Is the political right failing its voters? That's my question to you this morning. 0344 499 1000. Call me. We'll have that conversation. Send a WhatsApp, I'll read it out. Send a voice note, we'll play it out. 0344 499 1000. Is the political right failing its own voters? 6:15, this is Talk.
You actually recorded the argument that was taking place.
Yes.
Now, I spent some time trying to translate it. So I had the recording put through various translation apps, and then just to be sure, because I was pretty dismayed by what the apps were telling me, I ran it past a native speaker of the language concerned, and the language is Iranian Kurdish. At least some of the people who are bringing these boats to the UK are linked to Iran.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
18 minutes past 6. Good morning, this is Duncan Barkes. It's Talk, the home of common sense. It's Saturday breakfast through until 10. Asking you this morning, is the political right failing its own voters? You want to get involved in that? 0344 499 1000. Going through some of this morning's news stories with Neil Wallace, former editor of the News of the World. Neil, we've done the political stuff and we'll get some reaction from Talk viewers and listeners in a few moments' time. But let's turn our attention this morning to Middlesbrough. And this particular story just continues to run. We discover inside the last few hours that 4 men have been arrested on suspicion of ramming into a house and an arson attack on a caravan. This comes during a recent crackdown on organised crime in the town following the fatal the A66 crash, which was last Saturday, that left 7 dead, with a total number of arrests now at 24. Cleveland police have arrested 4 men aged 35, 25, 40 and 21. They're currently in custody and are being questioned by police on suspicion of criminal damage. Now, there's a narrative circulating that all of this is down to effectively gang warfare in Middlesbrough. And yesterday here on Talk, I spoke to former police officer Norman Brennan, and he was saying, you know, he said, this is not unique to Middlesbrough. There are towns and cities right across the UK where literally they're suffering at the hands of what is effectively gangland warfare, and the police don't have the resources to properly tackle it. What's your take on what we've heard over the last 7 days in Middlesbrough?
I think this is one of the most important and obviously interesting stories we've had a long time. You know what's really important, Duncan? That what we've been reading about, so here we have another spread in the Sun, right? What we've been reading about this week didn't start last Saturday morning.
It's been bubbling.
It was already there. And that's the importance of this. And what's very plain is that the police have lost control in Middlesbrough. How could they not have known these drug gangs existed? How could they not have known that there was this level of criminality there? And if they did know, why did they not tackle it? And it has been allowed to get out of control. And it is plainly, completely out of control. It's open warfare. I'm amazed that the death toll is actually as low as it is, because they're trying to kill each other up there. And it appears that the Middlesbrough police are simply standing aside because they're hopeless and helpless in trying to put a stop to it. I'll tell you a little interesting thing that came out. The Assistant Chief Constable giving some big long statement yesterday about how they were going to crack down. Why they didn't crack down 10 days ago is beyond me. But he said something very significant as well, though. He was saying how what they were trying to do as well were, and they were succeeding, he said proudly, that they were returning to prison people who had been let out early. And You know, what does that say to us?
Yeah.
You know, we have this madness of this Labour government releasing prisoners early. Now, I quite accept that the Tories were completely at fault for allowing the prison system to hit the buffers as they have done. But you know what? The Labour government's been in power for 2 years now.
Yeah.
It's on them.
You can't just blame the Tories. I mean, that moment has passed, and I often say this with Labour politicians. You can get away with it probably for the first 6 to 12 months. After that, you've got to take accountability. And you're right. I mean, this is a very complex story, and you refer to the Sun splash with the headline "The Untouchables." I mean, that's off the back of comments from Andy Preston, who's the former mayor of Middlesbrough, claiming untouchables control the streets. And we had this sickening spectacle of cars being set alight as part of some kind of tribute or vigil to one of the gang members who died. Now, you look at this, and this was a couple of days ago, and there are cars. I mean, the picture in the Sun says it all. These are cars which have been set alight by these thugs, and it's just like, why have they not been rounded up and arrested? I mean, how can this be allowed to happen?
It's actually a field, but this is the streets of Britain.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be a civilised country. They were able to take those cars there. They were able to assemble those cars there. Where is their intelligence?
Yeah.
Where is their, if you like, news gathering? Newspapers know about this. Yeah. Why aren't the police there?
So here's the thing, Neil, right? We've seen over the last 12 months, we've seen, and a little bit before that, we've seen the police on the streets in Southport, okay, when there was civil disruption there, or civil unrest and disturbances off the back of Axel Rudakabana's murders of those little girls. We've seen the police out on the streets of Southampton when people started to protest and voice their displeasure over the murder of Henry Novak, right? So if the police are motivated, or rather, if they feel like it, they can be motivated to take to the streets in big numbers to crack down on stuff, right? So do you start concluding that actually this is about political will? I don't know, because if we want to address stuff like this, it appears we can, given certain instances in the past. But in Middlesbrough, it seems the police are pretty much absent.
I wonder whether what we're seeing is a rupturing of the principle of policing. What's it for? We know they will send police officers to the home of someone who has sent an incautious tweet.
On social
media. We know they will do that.
Yeah.
We know they will be obsessed about 20-mile-an-hour speed limits.
Yeah.
What they don't appear to be obsessed about is simply protecting your and my loved ones, ordinary people who are getting caught in this.
Yeah, exactly.
This is terrifying.
It is terrible. And you know, I find myself thinking, and I think a lot of talk viewers and listeners will be in the same place, which is, you know what, if you're a law-abiding taxpayer in this country, you know, we pay vast amounts of tax, right? We hand it over to the government under the rule of law, and we expect them to keep us safe. And that works right across the board, from defending our borders, to making sure we have enough warships, to making sure that our streets for our wives, daughters and ourselves are safe to walk down, okay? None of that's happening.
It simply isn't, is it? And what we're looking at here as well, this is why reform is taking off in places like that, because of the frustration of the ordinary, decent people in here, because this culture has been allowed to grow by the Labour Party, who've run this for decades. And this isn't just about these awful jobs.
No.
Those awful jobs have ended up like this because of complete failure of parenting, of policing, of just an entire system has let them down. And that's why we need government.
Yeah.
And we're not getting it.
And that entire system includes justice as well, where certainly I think under Blair, and since then, and it's continued under Conservatives as well, despite this kind of, oh, we're tough on law and order, there's been this growth of let's try and understand the mindset of the criminal. Why do they carry out these things? Is society to blame? Is it because there weren't enough youth clubs? Blah, 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 blah. And I think most of us of sane minds would just go, regardless of that, you should know the difference between right or wrong, and if you continually break the law, you need to be punished.
Yeah.
That's the only thing, you understand. 6:27 is the time. Let's turn our attention to this story that's on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. The United States has threatened to oppose Britain's sovereignty over the Falklands if Andy Burnham does not increase defence spending. The proposal is among measures being drawn up by senior defence officials at the Pentagon as an incentive to hit NATO's 5% spending pledge. Now, that particular story also goes hand in hand with a story on the front page of the FT this morning, talking about our Chancellor John Healey, who's the report saying that Healey to defer defence spending target 3% of GDP by 2030. That was the goal, and that's been shelved. Now, this is, I think, I mentioned this earlier, Neil, if you're of a certain generation, you all remember the Falklands conflict. I certainly do. I remember the task force sailing to the South Atlantic to reclaim the Falklands. Do you think this is the Pentagon just doing a little bit of kind of like a little bit of pressure here just to get Andy Burnham to focus his mind, or do you think there's a very real prospect that the US might just go, you know what, I don't think Britain deserves the Falklands?
I think that we have seen, haven't we, that the Trump White House will use any kind of pressure that they can to beat into line anybody who doesn't do what they want them to do. And they're plainly very unhappy about the lack of British involvement in NATO.
Yeah.
We have been left behind. We were once one of the biggest spenders in NATO.
Yeah.
The Ukraine has focused minds, tragically for Ukraine, of course, but it has focused minds in Europe, and other people are upping their spending, realising they've got to stand firm. They've got to stand up to Putin. And what you're seeing in, I think it's the Mail this morning, there's a story about Putin, the danger that Putin is going to open up another front, as it were,
right,
that he will attack probably one of the Baltic states, yep, to try to test the resolution, yep, of NATO. Are we in a position? We couldn't even send a destroyer, no, to the Strait of Hormuz during the start of the Iran war.
Well, do you remember? It was HMS Dragon, wasn't it? And you know, I know a little. I'm a bit interested in the Navy, so bear with me here. It was HMS Dragon that was berthed at Portsmouth Harbour, and we were going to send it down to Cyprus, weren't we? Because, yeah, one of our RAF bases was attacked by a drone out of Lebanon, and it took us 3 weeks to get it down there because HMS Dragon has got nothing to do with the ratings on board. It's got more to do with the fact that I believe the MOD have taken their eye off the ball for far too long, and we should always have a warship that's action ready, and it wasn't. You know, it took us 3 weeks to get this one vessel, HMS Dragon, down to Cyprus, and that
it was the only one available.
It was the only one available, and that's before you get into the fact that I think it's a Type 45 destroyer, and they have problems with their engines if they're sailing in warm sea waters, which gets you back into the whole thing about procurement. It's like, who decided that was a good idea? Yeah. So, I mean, the defence of this nation, which I've always taken the view should be paramount. You know, governments have various responsibilities to its people. The key one needs to be defending the country, right?
It's always been the basic principle.
Exactly. And successive governments, I think... Well, I'll ask you the question. Why do you think over successive governments the eye's been taken off the ball regarding defence?
Because they believed the peace dividend.
Right.
They believed that... they were happy for Putin to run amok in Russia and, yeah, do whatever he's doing there. But really, they wanted to spend the money elsewhere. And so we are absolutely in this situation now where it's welfare or warfare. And where is this government wanting to spend its money?
Yeah.
I'm afraid welfare's winning every time. So you have this story which is all over the front of the Daily Mail about the guy who resigned in protest about lack of defence, yeah, spending.
Yeah.
Oh, look, he's just... John Healey, he's just put off, kicked into the long grass. The whole issue, he's supposedly resigned in principle about. What on earth is going on?
It's a shocker. Let's get into that in more detail a little bit later on, because I think John Healey deserves both you and I picking over potentially what he's not going to announce on October the 28th. We'll do that in a few moments' time. I'll get to some messages and calls as well off the back of our question this morning here on Talk. Is the political right failing its own voters? That's what I'm asking. 0344 499 1000. Split splits in the right of the political landscape. The Tories, restore, reform, or split. If they can't sort it out, we're going to end up with another socialist government in Downing Street. So the question this morning is this: is the political right failing its own voters? 0344 499 1000 for your calls, your WhatsApps and your voice notes. Just turned 6:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is 6:34. Good morning. Saturday breakfast. It's Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Duncan Barkes. I'm here through until 10 o'clock this morning. A lot of stuff going on here. You want to pick up on anything that you hear? 0344 499 1000. Our big question this morning on Saturday breakfast is a political question, but it's not just about politics, if that makes sense, because whilst it's a political question, I believe this is about the future of the United Kingdom. We're asking the question, is the political right failing its own voters? Chiefly because on the front page of the Weekend, there's this bit of polling that has Labour on 27%, Reform UK on 23%, the Conservatives on 18%, and Restore Britain on 5%. We also have the outcome of this. It was a by-election at Dover District Council, and they thought, everyone said, look, this is going to be a three-horse race because it's Dover, the place where all of these illegal migrants arrive. It's either going to be the Tories, Restore, or Reform. The Green Party got the seat because the political right was split. So we need to talk about this, and we need to have the honest conversation this morning here on Talk. Is the political right failing its own voters? 0344 499 1000. Call me, let me know. Voice note me, WhatsApp me, a couple of messages, and then we'll talk to Derek in Manchester. This is Huey. He says, good morning, Neil and Duncan. Don't be so sure that Badenoch will be the leader of the bigger party after the next election. It may well be Reform who have more seats, and I suspect Farage will do a Clegg and say he'll form a coalition with the Tories, but only if Badenoch stands down. Well, that is interesting. I mean, let's remember that Nigel Farage has said he wants to destroy the Conservative Party in the past. Whether or not Kemi would ignore those comments of the past and try and work with him in a coalition, I'm not entirely sure. This one here from Jan in Newcastle, who says, yes, the right are letting down voters because I believe now none of them can win a general election on their own. The hatred for each other is childish and irresponsible and counterproductive to their apparent commitment to this country and need to get rid of a socialist government, says Jan in Newcastle. Derek is in Manchester. Morning, Derek.
Morning. How are you doing?
Yeah, we're both well, thank you. What would you like to say?
Good. Well, it was just that you were saying before, you seem to be putting all the blame on Rupert Lowe and Restore. You know,
I'm not blaming anyone, but I think there's a discussion.
You certainly sounded like you were. I mean, the top and bottom of it is Nigel Farage has pretty much destroyed every party he's been in. So it's not surprising that some voters really don't trust him anymore. Rupert Lowe was only kicked out because he was supposedly more too extreme for reform. Now, at the end of the day, maybe people want someone a bit more extreme, because Nigel Farage seems to have gone back on every single policy he's ever done. One of the only reasons he ever got into politics was to, and he's said this on many a time, was to destroy the British National Party. Now, many years ago, and I'm going back 20-odd years, they were the only people saying what is actually happening now. They were the only people warning about the grooming gangs long before the media or anyone else ever got involved in it. So, you know, for a man to come out and say he wants to destroy a party that is actually exposing what was going on and predicting what was going to happen to this country, you know, that tells me that he's not genuine in what he's telling the public.
Right. So from what you've said so far, am I right to deduce that you don't think Reform UK, you know, have got enough about them to become the next government of this country?
Well, it's the same with all parties. The top and bottom of it is an election manifesto should be a legally binding document, because until it is, they can stand there, the likes of Nigel Farage, Kemi Badenoch, they can all stand there and try and outdo whoever they want to, Rupert Lowe, whoever it might be. They can stand there and shout from the rooftops, "Oh, we're going to do this now because Rupert said he's going to do it. We're going to do this because the BNP said they were going to do it."
Derek, let me ask you to pause for a second, because my guest this hour is Neil Wallace, former editor of the News of the World.
I know who he is, yeah.
Excellent. Neil, that's quite interesting, isn't it? The idea that a manifesto should be a legally binding document.
Well, it'd certainly be a problem for our current Prime Minister, wouldn't it? Because he hasn't got one.
A problem for all of them.
Yeah, it would be a problem for all of them. I mean, would it work, though?
Probably not, because circumstances do change. But it is an extremely valid point he makes, that if you promise something to the electorate, there has to be a damn good reason if you don't fulfil it.
Yeah. Derek, let's bring it full circle, if you don't mind. I mean, we're discussing the split, if you like, on the political right, and I think you and I can agree that there is a split going on, because
there is a split, and there shouldn't be. But the top and bottom of it is what you've got a problem. I think maybe people like Rupert Lowe can see right through people like Nigel Farage. I certainly can.
Right.
As I say, I've seen Nigel Farage promise things over the.
Understood. No, you made that point, and I get that. So where does this leave us then? Do we just accept that the political right in this country will never find a way of working together, and if we get another socialist government in Downing Street, we're just going to have to put up with it?
Well, we've got major problems. We've had major problems for years, and like I say, the root of the matter is that politicians can go into office on an absolute pack of lies. There's no comeback for them, because there's nothing. You can't sue a politician, unfortunately, where you should be able to.
Why are you laughing, Neil?
Suing politicians? By golly, the courts would be pretty damn busy then, wouldn't they?
Well, exactly, and that's the point. If someone promised, if I went for a job and I gave them a totally duff CV, and 2 weeks later, I've all my life I've drove vehicles, and 2 weeks later I smash someone's wagon up, they're going to come after me because I've told lies on that CV. With a politician, that's not possible, and they can go into office, they can totally destroy the country, not a bit of a wagon, someone's wagon, they can totally destroy the country. And we can't do a single thing about it.
Final question, Derek. Where do you think we're heading politically in the UK?
Well, disaster. We've been heading it for the last 20, 30 years, and no one's been listening. And the media, if you don't mind me saying, the media have also, and that includes the Sun when it was about, because they were calling the BNP like that, like there was no tomorrow. Yet they were the only party that were telling the truth, and I don't care what anyone says about that.
All right, Derek, thanks for your call. Derek in Manchester here on Talk. 6:41 is the time. Disaster, says Derek. We're heading towards a disaster. I've often said this before, Neil. I feel sometimes in this country, depending on whichever news stories appear, and Middlesbrough is a great example of it, actually, it feels like everything's on the cusp. It's like 5 minutes to midnight. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, yeah. I really do think that... I was reading the other day about the quality of politicians in this country compared to post-war. Of course, you had a different generation with a different background who'd been, if you like, forged in fire, haven't they? And they knew what they were going to have to do to restore the country. And you have a situation now where you have a Labour Party that doesn't represent ordinary people. It's filled with middle-class, university-educated folk from the inner city suburbs. They have no connection with the people in Middlesbrough that they should be representing, leading and coaching their lives. And this is a terrible thing we're witnessing here. It's a sort of a profession of politicians.
You are so right. The bar is really low, isn't it? And I'm so glad you made that point, because if you look at the majority of Labour MPs in the Labour front bench, you can argue a lot of them have never had a real job.
Never had a job.
And what I mean by a real job is having a job where you're responsible for running a business, making money, delivering results. You know, a lot of these people come from charities. A lot of these people come from NGOs. A lot of them go straight from unions. A lot of them come straight out of university. They work in an MP's office. Then they become a SPAD, a special advisor. Then they become an MP or whatever, you know. And this is problematic. And I look at a lot of MPs, actually, right across the political spectrum, not just Labour. And it's like a bad episode of The Apprentice. You know, you kind of watch it and you go, is this it?
Very good.
Is this it? Is this what we've got now? Are these people who have got the power, have the right to actually create laws in this country, who are responsible for trying to get this country on track? Is this what we've got left? And it's actually a pretty poor sight.
You saw it in Middlesbrough when their local MP is a minister in the Justice Department. I think her name's Anna Turley.
Yeah.
And she said, our thoughts are with everybody who died in that crash, equating those two police officers who were killed. They were murdered, in my view. And the 5 thugs in that getaway car who were racing up the wrong way up the A66. And she was putting them on the same level.
I know.
What kind of equivocation is that? How can somebody in that position be in any kind of office? But you know what? In times gone by, she'd have lost her job over that. And she should have done, because it was a disgraceful thing to say. And what are our politicians coming to when they don't understand?
Well, I mean, tone deaf, tin ear doesn't really cover it. But you've actually made another great point, which is the fact that, again, and I hate banging on about this, but you and I, of a slightly older generation, right, we remember a time when politicians, if they got it wrong, they resigned. They did the honourable thing. Do you remember over the Falklands that we mentioned earlier? It was Lord Carrington, who I think was Foreign Secretary under Margaret Thatcher, and he didn't see the invasion of the Falklands coming. And he's just said, I failed at my job, and he resigned. You know, a lot of people said, well, look, you know, you shouldn't resign over this, Lord Carrington. But he was like, no, it was my job, it was on my watch, and I let down the government. What a great man to actually fall on his own sword. If only you could have that kind of behaviour and integrity now in politics.
Well, again, you look at Thatcher. Thatcher could have just ignored what was happening in the Falklands. She could have just gone like that. She could have said, you know, it's too far away. But, of course, she didn't, and she wouldn't have done. And she showed leadership. She showed principle. She showed commitment. And that's what we lack.
We do.
You know, as I say, I can't get over Andy Burnham. He's come in and he's had the greatest opportunity. Well, since Starmer, who completely blew it, of course. But he had such a golden, he's got such a golden opportunity. And this, as this rightly says, is a Burnham bounce, because people want to believe in a politician. But I'm sick of seeing him strum a guitar or sit on, make videos about pub snacks.
I know you're not alone, and my prediction is the burn and bounce will disappear shortly, because once he has proper scrutiny in Parliament, you know, I mean, Kemi at the dispatch box is going to pummel him, and he won't be able to deal with it. Listen, more chat to come after the break. Couple of stories I'm keen to chew over. The Reform Council hiring security guards to protect public from migrants. And also today is the beginning of the Notting Hill Carnival weekend, which is always an interesting thing to kick around. I find myself thinking, as someone who's broadcast on various radio stations in London over the decades, that this kind of event, with the trouble that's often associated with it and the arrests and the violence, if it was any other event, it would have been banned by now. We'll get into that in a few moments' time. My guest is Neil Wallace, former editor of the News of the World. I'm Duncan Barkes. It's Saturday Breakfast. It's Talk. It's 13 minutes to 7.
You actually recorded the argument that was taking place.
Yes.
Now, I spent some time trying to translate it. So I had the recording put through various translation apps, and then just to be sure, because I was pretty dismayed by what the apps were telling me, I ran it past a native speaker of the language concerned, and the language is Iranian Kurdish. At least some of the people who are bringing these boats to the UK are linked to Iran.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's 10 to 7, it's Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Duncan Barkes. Our main question to you this morning is the political right in this country failing its own voters? As we look at a poll that's on the front page of one of the newspapers, burn and bounce, Labour leapfrogs Farage in the polls after he loses voters to Restore. If you work on the basis that the right in this country politically is represented by the Tories, Reform and Restore, do they not need to, well, literally give their heads a wobble and try and find a way of working together? Otherwise, we may see another socialist government back in Downing Street. So I'm asking you, as a voter, as a taxpayer, is the political right failing its own voters? 0344 499 1000. Keep your calls coming in, your WhatsApps and also your voice notes. Neil Wallace, former editor of the News of the World, is alongside me as we go through some of this morning's news stories. Neil, this is an interesting one coming out of Essex. This is a Reform UK-led council. And there's this operation that's been set up by their leader, Operation Vanguard. held in response to fears over gatherings of male asylum seekers in city centres across the county of Essex. The council is to become the first to pay for town centre security guards to protect residents from asylum seekers. The leader of Essex County Council, a chap called Peter Harris, said he was launching Operation Vanguard to pay for private security presence in Braintree, Colchester and also Chelmsford, where migrants housed on a former military base were being taken by bus to spend free time. How have we ended up like this?
It's a truly unbelievable story, this. He ran a piece in the Daily Mail last week because he went to one of these asylum seeker camps. And, he detailed, all right, we don't, these people aren't technically criminals. We don't want them chained to a wall. But, the circumstances in which they live, they are literally like holiday camps. But the idea that they have buses to run them into nearby city centres, town centres, so they can basically, presumably, be entertained so they don't get bored.
Yeah.
It, to me, is absolutely extraordinary. Do we want to make it ever more attractive for them? They'll be demanding soon that we give them even more money, cash in their pocket, so they can go and play in the slot arcades or whatever. And it's just an amazing idea that they're running fleets of buses to entertain these guys. And, if women in particular are feeling intimidated by this.
Yeah.
And so you can see the sense that you have to ask the question, why aren't there enough police on the streets so that they are there as a visible deterrent? It's a very tragically logical thing they're doing.
It is, and it also gets us into this area where a lot of these people are from cultures where they have very different values compared to ours, right? They don't respect women in the way that we do in this country. The countries they come from don't give women the same amount of rights as we do. And it is problematic. It is problematic. So if you have predominantly a gathering of male asylum seekers who are bussed into, let's say, Chelmsford. Young male asylum
almost
seekers.
Universally in their teens and 20s.
Well, let's have this conversation, shall we? Because if you're genuinely seeking asylum and fleeing tyranny, wouldn't you take your wives and your daughters with you?
You'd have thought so. You would have thought that's who you want to protect.
Exactly.
But the truth is they're economic migrants.
They are. So, you rock up in some part of Essex or whatever, you get bussed into, let's say, Colchester, you're hanging around, you've got nothing to do. It is problematic for any population. And also, we know from Andy Burnham, our Prime Minister, he doesn't have a great deal of sympathy because a couple of days ago, he was saying, well, different parts of the UK are going to have to take their fair share of asylum seekers, including affluent parts. And there's this ongoing story about, I think it's Pinnington in Oxfordshire, which is a lovely rural kind of village with about 600 people in it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And they're about to have hundreds of asylum seekers put into the community. That simply doesn't work, does it?
Well, it simply can't work. I spend a lot of time in Cornwall, which is, in large areas, is very rural indeed. And the idea of simply dumping sort of 400 young males with nothing to do there, it just completely would shatter what you might call the ecosystem of society there. That's just not how it works. That you don't live in, is it called Piddington?
Pinnington, yeah.
Piddington. You don't live there if that's the sort of life you want.
No.
Go to East London.
Yeah.
Move there if that's how you want to experience your life. But the disruption to this and what it seems to me is an almost casual disregard for the local people.
Yeah.
They're just ciphers, they're just numbers. Central government just thinks they don't matter.
Yeah.
They're probably not going to vote for us anyway.
Completely ignored. Yeah, they're not going to vote for us, so let's punish them as well.
Yeah.
Listen, 5 minutes to 7 is the time. Quickly, it is the Notting Hill Carnival weekend, and as always, we see homeowners and local businesses in this part of London. It's in a district called, it's W10, it's West 10, it's West London, in the capital city. If you're listening outside of London, Notting Hill Carnival, it happens every year. It's been happening for decades, and what happens, local businesses, homeowners, they board up their properties. You know, they put shutters over their windows and stuff, and the police mount a massive operation over the bank holiday weekend, and it's something that's been going on for a long, long time. And whenever it is a Notting Hill Carnival weekend, we always have this issue where I think people just go, this is a lot of stuff going on for one event. It's excessive policing. It costs local taxpayers, council taxpayers, hundreds of thousands of pounds. Neil, is this something that we should accept needs to carry on because it's got heritage in the capital city and you can argue it's good for diversity? Or do you think that Notting Hill Carnival gets some kind of special treatment?
I think both of those things are right. It seems to me that the problem with the Notting Hill Carnival is where it is.
Yeah.
Why can't you pick it up and put it, say, in a park?
Yeah.
In, say, I don't know, Finsbury Park, or there's one of the things that London is blessed with. It has some wonderful large open parklands.
Yep.
Well, the truth of the matter is, what we've seen is that if it was completely peaceful, if it was completely lawful, and it was just like a glorified village fete writ large,
Yeah.
then okay. But the truth of it is that it isn't. No. There can be huge problems there. People have been murdered there, people have been killed, drugs, damage to property, and the truth is that you simply can't leave it there and not take some sort of action.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people go, well, hang on a second, if this was any other kind of event where you saw this amount of arrests and trouble, it would not be allowed to continue. And that gets us into this whole area, which we often talk about here on Talk, which is this kind of like this two-tier approach in this country.
Yeah, I think that if someone had the will, and the problem is with Sadiq Khan, you're never going to have someone who is the mayor of London. Yeah. You're never going to get this resolved. It's about taking a decision and saying, that cannot be done there. You can have it in the park. Yeah. But not where these are narrow streets, people that, I mean, dreadful stories about drug abuse. And, you know, front gardens used as toilets.
Awful.
And all sorts of civil unpleasantness. You think of something unpleasant that you can do in a public place, it gets done there. All
right, Neil, an absolute pleasure to have you in for the last hour. Thank you, Neil Wallace, former editor of the News of the World. Have a good bank holiday weekend, and thank you for joining us here on Talk. I'm Duncan Barkes. It's Saturday Breakfast. We're here through until 10 this morning. A reminder, our big question is a little bit political related, but really I see it about the future of the United Kingdom. It's this: is the political right failing its own voters, where we have Reform, Restore and the Tories, all who appeal not to like each other, splitting the right of the vote in the United Kingdom? Are they letting down voters in this country? 0344 499 1000 for your calls, your WhatsApps and your voice notes on that. After 7, we'll go through more of this morning's news stories with Steve N. Allen, comedian and broadcaster, here on Saturday Breakfast.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. 2 minutes past 7. It's Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Duncan Barkes. It's Saturday breakfast through until 10 this morning. Good to have you along. If you're listening in England and Wales, have you got some decent plans for the bank holiday weekend? And if you're listening in Scotland, then business as usual on Monday morning. Front pages of Saturday's newspapers. The Sun this morning has a royal story. It's about Fergie. Fergie's coming home is the headline. This is Sarah Ferguson coming back from exile, as the paper describes it, after Harry and Meghan's return. Fergie is back in the United Kingdom. She's heading here. The ex-wife of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor reportedly is renting a £10,000 a week house in the home counties. I wonder where the money comes from. You often read reports that Fergie is a bit skint. And certainly in the past, if you look at some of the Epstein stuff that's come out, quite keen to get our hands on cash in the past. Those have been the allegations. I'm wondering where the 10 grand a week is coming from to rent that house. That's the front page of the Sun, the Times newspaper this morning. Prime Minister warned over stupid tax raid on capital gains. This is Andy Burnham being warned by a senior ally that increasing taxes on wealth in the budget would be stupid because it would encourage entrepreneurs to leave the country and it would damage economic growth. The Prime Minister spent more than a month attempting to convince a chap called Lord O'Neill of Gatley to join his government as either a minister or as an economic advisor, but was unable to do so. This is interesting because this guy knows what he's talking about. He's given an interview to the Times. This is Lord O'Neill, saying that if the government raised taxes in the budget on the 28th of October, it would show the ministers were not thinking about growth as sincerely as they claim they are. He said it would also show they were being scared and lazy and constrained in failing to take on sacred cows such as the pension triple lock and welfare reform. Front page of the Times. The budget due on the 28th of October, being delivered by John Healey, our new Chancellor, who also makes the front pages of a couple of newspapers. The Financial Times this morning, Healey to defer defence spend target. This is the man who used to be Defence Secretary, you may remember, John Healey. He quit because he said the future plan regarding defence spending wasn't enough money there, and he quit over this. Now he's Chancellor. It turns out, it's been reported, he's going to shelve his own target of spending 3% of Britain's GDP, that's gross domestic product, on defence by 2030 when he does his first budget. Healey resigned as Defence Secretary in June over what he saw as an inadequate ambition for military spending by Sir Keir Starmer's government, but since arriving at the Treasury, he has had to grapple with financial constraints. I'm just wondering how much of Healey's resignation as Defence Secretary was really about just removing Sir Keir Starmer as Prime Minister. I mean, these politicians, just when you think they can't sink any lower, something else comes along. Front page of the Eye this morning, Burnham bounce, Labour leapfrogs Farage in polls after he loses voters to Restore. They've got a graph here. It shows Labour on 27%, Reform on 23%, the Tories on 18%, Green Party on 11%, Lib Dems on 10%, and Restore Britain on 5%. And this is how the Eye reports this set of results. Remember, it's only one poll, that's usual caveat here. New evidence that Prime Minister has cemented a lead over Reform UK, likely to send concern rippling through Nigel Farage's party, says the Eye. Labour 4 points ahead, whilst the PM also increases his own personal popularity among public after cost of living policies. Apparently, he's the only leader with a positive approval rating. Farage losing 1 in 10 of his voters to Restore. Majority of UK public now in favour of cutting PIP, the personal independence payment, and replacing some cash disability benefits with job support. The findings from this Eye research. The Mirror talks about King Charles, who's written to the families of the 2 police officers killed in the A66 horror crash. The Telegraph this morning, I mean, I think this is concerning. It's the headline, America's Falklands threat to Britain. The Telegraph reporting that the United States has threatened to oppose British sovereignty over the Falkland Islands if Andy Burnham does not increase defence spending. That's on the front page of the Telegraph. And there's something else I wanted to mention here. Yeah, a story that we've been talking about. A reform-led council is to become the first to pay for town centre security guards to protect residents from asylum seekers. This is the leader of Essex County Council, Peter Harris. He's launching Operation Vanguard to pay for private security guards in Braintree, Colchester and Chelmsford, where migrants housed on a former military base were taken or are being taken by bus to spend their free time. That's on the front page of the Telegraph. And a little bit of Gen Z bashing this morning. Gen Z almost twice as likely to pull a sickie, claims the newspaper. Gen Z workers are almost twice as likely to take a sickie compared with their colleagues aged over 55. As results of a survey carried out by Merlin Strategy for the Centre for Social Justice also revealed that 39% of under 25s reported calling in sick on at least 5 days in the past year when they could have worked. Listen, I mean, I'm Gen X. I'm not a Gen Zer here. We are really hard, Gen X. And, you know, I mean, I was born in 73. You know, you're listening to someone who comes from a generation where literally, unless your leg was falling off, you know, you would still go into work. Gen Xers, like myself, and Dave, who's pushing the buttons here this morning at Talk, you know, we'd be out till 4 in the morning, we'd go home, kip on the sofa for 90 minutes, get up, have a shower, go to work. It's what you do. Gen X, the hardest generation of all. Daily Express this morning, Burnham vows to stay out of the assisted dying vote. The Prime Minister has pledged not to intervene in the MP's vote on legalising assisted dying. That's on the front page of the Express. The Mail this morning, surrender, exclamation mark, the headline, talking about John Healey, the Chancellor, former Defence Secretary who quit in protest at Starmer's refusal to spend 3% of GDP on defence by 2030. Now, as Chancellor, he's shelved the same target. Guardian talks about the tragedy in Nepal. And the Daily Star talks about Joey Essex, who says he still can't tell the time. You're an embarrassment, man. 9 minutes past 7. It's Talk, the home of common sense. This is Duncan Barkes with Saturday Breakfast. A reminder of our question this morning. It's a little bit political, but also it's about the future of this country. That's how I interpret it. And this is the question. Is the political right failing its own voters? This split on the right of UK politics with the Tories, Reform and Restore, all going after the same voters. Variations on the theme. They're split. Are they letting down? Are they failing voters in this country by not finding a way of working together? 0344 499 1000 is the number for your calls, your voice notes and your WhatsApps. If you're old school, you can text 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Let's get some reaction to some of this morning's stories. Steve N. Allen, comedian and broadcaster, joins us. Morning, Steve.
Good morning. It's nice to be here with a fellow Gen Xer. Proper stuff. The
proper stuff, the hardcore. And can I just say, you and I have spent the last couple of years passing each other in corridors in various media places and stuff. So it's a pleasure to actually work alongside you. So good to see you on this Saturday morning.
I know why we've never been booked together. We're both bald men in effeminate shirts. I'm not quite sure how this happened.
But exactly it. Yeah, exactly that. You never see them in the same place twice until this morning. Listen, let's crack on with this. I mean, one of the things we're asking our Talk viewers and listeners is about where we find ourselves politically in the United Kingdom with this split on the political right. The Eye newspaper's done some polling. It shows that there's a Burnham bounce. It also shows, you know, you've got Reform in second place, the Tories in third, and then Restore Britain on 5%. And that might not seem like a big number. However, if there were to be a general election, you know, that Restore Britain vote could potentially eat into the Reform UK vote and maybe deliver another socialist government in Downing Street. What's your take on this?
Look, I get it. There's two takes on it. There's the maths takes on it. Yes, mathematically it is causing the problem. Mathematically it's splitting the vote. But politically, in the reality of politics, this is what politics is. This is what the left has been dealing with for ages. So the job of politics is, can you win an election despite a little bit of attrition on either side of your political position? Because that's what you will be facing. Like the left have been fighting this for ages. Did a little bit of a Google to try and get my head around all of the parties. So if you're voting left, you obviously go Labour. Depending on where you are in the nation, you could have a little bit of Plaid Cymru, Scottish Greens or SNP. The Greens trying to take some vote as well. The Trade Unionist Socialist Coalition and your party all fielding candidates as well. So that's part of the thing. It's part of the inertia to try and win an election will be fighting the people slightly to your flank. So in some ways, you can't expect the right to magically get some gift of just being walked straight through the door. It's often been the way that the left fights itself and the right fights the left. And that's why the right has been focused on winning elections, quite rightly. Instead of being some sort of ideological argument group, some debate group, they've been focused on the actual eyes on the prize, winning an election. I thought it was hilarious back when Jeremy Corbyn said, after he lost an election, well, we lost the election, but we won the argument. Yeah. Well, it's a shame you weren't playing a game of argument then, wasn't it? Because you'd just done an election, you fool. The right are really good at focusing on getting behind a party to vote. It's not as if all the Tories used to get on with each other. Like, wow, famously, a broad church that did not agree on Europe. But they focus to win, and that's what we're not seeing now.
Yeah, and I mean, we often hear people, and certainly I've heard the conversations and the debate played out here on Talk, where people say, and I'm not saying this is not my viewpoint necessarily, because I think people should have the choice to vote for whoever they want. However, there is a narrative that does develop, particularly from Reform UK supporters, and indeed members and their own MPs, saying, you know, restore Britain, you need to step aside, because actually, you know, you're taking away our vote, and that will allow another socialist government back in Downing Street. You seem to be saying, do you know what, but this is all politics. This is how politics works. So, I mean, do we just have to accept that the right is splintered in the United Kingdom, and that's just fair and just politics in the UK?
Yeah, I think so, because the left is splintered, the right is splintered, and the job of winning the election isn't to say, oh, it's not fair, you're taking some of our votes. The job is to argue why the vote should go to you, rather than saying you should step down, otherwise they'll win. You've not talked about anyone's policy in that argument. It makes a logical sense, but you're not selling anything good to us. It's quite a negative policy, isn't it, to say, or negative politics, to say, you can't stand for this election because otherwise the baddies win. Come on, try and convince us with actual policies that we will appreciate when they're enacted.
We have to make the observation, though, that I think the left of our political landscape currently are more likely to work together than the right are. You know, I could see a time where Andy Burnham and the Labour Party do some kind of deal with the Greens or even the Lib Dems if it meant, you know, getting into Downing Street as some kind of rainbow coalition. I think that's more likely on the left than it would be on the right of the political spectrum, because we know that Kemi doesn't like Nigel. We know that Nigel says he wants to destroy the Conservative Party, and we know that Rupert Lowe's Restore Britain. Well, Rupert doesn't like Nigel because he sacked him. So, I mean, there is an issue here, isn't there, that the right, potentially, as it's made up at the moment, will never work together.
The problem is the right has been falling out not on policies or on positions. It's been falling out on almost character. It's been character assassination. I don't like them. They told fibs. Oh, I don't like what they're... And the problem with that is then you get yourself in a situation where you can't have that political climb down. Because normally, if we're all honest, the way it works is on the way into an election, every party pretends that they're so pure and they'd never do a deal. Vote for us, we'll never do a deal.
Never.
And as soon as you get presented with the numbers, like, well, you either go home or you make a coalition. Yeah. Like, literally, we all lived through the Tories and the Lib Dems. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And the only thing that convinced them to do it was numbers, pure maths. Yeah. Which the left will do. You're absolutely bang on with that. The right would probably still do it, but I really have to do a hard swallow because of all the name-calling they've done. Rather than political debate, they've been just picking apart people's personalities.
Well, let us remember, power is a great aphrodisiac. Listen, 7:15, it's Talk on a Saturday morning. Let's turn our attention to what we've been seeing over the last 7 days in Middlesbrough, Steve. I mean, there's a double-page spread in the Sun newspaper with the headline, The Untouchables, off the back of comments made by the former mayor of Middlesbrough, Andy Preston, saying that you have untouchables controlling the streets of the town that he was once mayor of. What's your take on what we've seen and heard coming out of Middlesbrough over the last week or so?
I mean, it's truly shocking, and it makes me realise how much I've been living my lovely little comfortable life. And it's not like I'm from some sort of privileged area. I'm from Mansfield. You know, it's got its roughness for crying out loud, but it's a lovely place. Yeah. But I didn't realise we have this level of criminality known about by the police, just acting on its own level, indeed untouchable. And it's the kind of thing, there's a bit of a leap here, but it makes me realise how bad the prisoner release scheme is. And now, obviously, none of the people involved so far, we even know that but it just doesn't add up, does it? When you have these kind of people who are, look, if you are doing any of the crimes that have been involved in any of the front pages, you know that's not their only thing. Someone who gets involved in driving a car into a building, that's not their first transgression. It's not going to be their first 3 points, is it? So there's a Pareto effect when it comes to crime. Some, like 20%, roughly 20% of people will be doing 80% of the crime. And these are the ones we're talking about. And we need prisons to be taking people like that and putting them in a building where they can't do the crimes near us. That's the basic principle of how it works. And we have failed to do that. And so it's an embarrassment that we're living in a country that is working hard to try and get people down to 40% of their prison sentence, maybe even just a sixth before they get sent home with an ankle tag. Oh, that'll stop them. So it really highlights how our current system is not working.
Yeah, and I was saying this earlier to Neil Wallace, former editor of the News of the World, who was in the studio here at Talk, that if you're a law-abiding taxpayer in this country, you look at some of the stuff coming out of Middlesbrough and you just go, what's the point? Because it does seem that the police either don't feel they can tackle the situation or simply don't have the resources to do so.
Yeah, I mean, it seems harsh to start questioning Will, but why would you just let this happen? I mean, if you don't have resources, then move resources around. They can move resources around when there's a protest they want to try and stop from happening. When people might have flyers in their boot, they'll investigate that. So I don't know. It seems that we just need a national wake-up call, and maybe this is it, because I suppose the newspapers could have been reporting on this before there was one big story that pulled focus. And I know that's not how journalism works. You need this story that then gets the journalists to investigate more, while this is the story that sells. We'll see it on the front pages. But we could have known about this before. The police knew about this before. We didn't need national upset before it was acted upon. So something should have been done.
I agree. Steve N. Allen, thank you for your time this morning. Have a good bank holiday weekend. Comedian and broadcaster Steve N. Allen here on Talk Breakfast on this Saturday morning. It's 7:18. This is Duncan Barkes. A reminder, we're picking over the political landscape in our country at the moment, in the United Kingdom, and asking you the question, is the political right failing its own voters? Now, this is not just a political story. I believe this is so big. This is about the future of the United Kingdom. And if you want a country that is going to be able to have a decent economy, decent defence, be strong on law and order, protect its borders. Have I missed anything else? Small state, low taxation. I think, welfare that works for the people who really need it, not for someone who fancies not working. If you want all of that, I think we need a political party that's centre-right, right? I think we can all agree on that, can't we? I think that's a fair description. So when you look at the right of the political spectrum here in the UK and you see the split that involves the Conservatives, Reform and Restore Britain, it's quite tragic. And as we discussed with Steve a few moments ago, more likely that those on the left will work together to come into government. And I take the view at the moment, and I'm prepared to have the conversation with you this morning, that if our next government is another socialist government, either under Labour or some ghastly rainbow coalition with Zach Palancy's Greens in there, that slightly weird bloke, and a dose of the Lib Dems as well, this country is gone. I mean, I was saying this yesterday on Talk. I mean, look, my problem is, I'm in my early 50s. Would I go and live elsewhere? Well, I don't know. I don't know where I'd go. But, I mean, if we ended up with a socialist rainbow coalition in Downing Street next time round, and you're someone in your late teens, early 20s, you might as well just go and live elsewhere because this country will be finished. So this isn't just a political question. For me, this is a question about the future of the UK. So answer me this, is the political right failing its own voters? And if the answer is yes, what the hell should they do about it? 0344 499 1000. I've got space available. Call me now. We'll chat. Voice note me, we'll play them out, and WhatsApp me, I'll read it out. 0344 499 1000. It's 7:20, it's Talk Breakfast.
We've got pride in it, and what we do is we will replace them, we do flag maintenance, but the left will come and only rip down the flags that are brand new put up. They will leave the old ones, and they play games, and it's, you know, it's a big game for these people, and for them then to just label us as a racist, it's the biggest get-out card ever. You look at people from the BBC, you know, Hugh Edwards, he's not gone to jail, yet they want to send somebody for putting a patriotic flag on a lamppost to jail. It's just absolutely
And
ludicrous.
you're going to make a stand?
100%.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's 7:23, Saturday breakfast. I'm Duncan Barkes. It is Talk, the home of common sense. After 7:30 this morning, we'll be talking to Philip Gazzelli, senior fellow at the New Culture Forum about this. Well, yet another story about flags not being allowed to be flown in this country. I mean, where else in the world is it such an issue that you get local councils kicking off about people who just want to fly either the St George Cross or the Union Jack flags in the United Kingdom? We'll get into that after 7:30, but let's get some messages and calls on the air as we chew over the state of the political right in the United Kingdom. Are they failing their own voters with this split on the right of the political spectrum? 0344 499 1000. We'll do some calls in a second. Let's do some voice notes first. This is Kev.
Morning, Duncan.
Hi.
I hope you're well, mate. Your opening question, where do you see this country going politically? Well, you also mentioned it in your opening monologue. What happened in Dover should be a wake-up call to people, seriously. You know, it's all right, freedom of choice and all of that, but these Restore Britain voters, what are you voting for? What are you doing? And you think, yeah, freedom of choice. We cannot afford another left-wing government, and that's the way we're going if you just keep voting for a party that cannot win a general election. There's no way you can win a general election this time round. But reform might. If even that would be difficult. You know, it's not going to be easy. Look at what the establishment are doing. But you are helping the establishment. Yes, you like Rupert. You might think he's stronger, but we cannot afford to lose this. And look what you're doing. Have a nice day, mate.
All right, Kev, look after yourself. Thank you for getting involved. That's Kev with his thoughts on where the country is heading. This is Jennifer.
Yes, the right of politics are failing this country at the moment. And if Rupert, Farage and Kemi Badenoch keep banging on and banging on and banging on about country first and everything else second, then they really need to get a grip of this. The Greens winning in Dover is quite scandalous when they effectively want an open border system. I mean, it's quite scandalous. And if Reform and especially Restore, to be quite honest, think that this is country first, they're well and truly mistaken, and they seriously need to do something about it. This is our last chance. The next general election is our last chance. So, right, get a grip and start putting country before yourselves.
Yeah, or country before ego. Jennifer, I really feel your despair. I really do. 7:26 is the time. Barry's in Norwich. Hello, Barry.
Good morning, Duncan. Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment on the right. I think the last two voice notes you had there sort of said what I was going to say, really. I just think Restore, they're not going to win an election. And like the last voice note said, you saw it in Dover. Yeah, that's just a snapshot of what's going to happen. I live under a Green council in Norwich, right? Yeah.
You had my greatest sympathy.
Yeah. I am a minority. Right.
Well, Barry, let's talk about that. What's it like living under a Green Council? I mean, how many recycling bins have you got? What are they telling you to do to how you live your life?
Oh God, it's just crazy. It's like a rainbow of bins, to be honest with you. Different colours and different days and different things. I mean, Norwich was the only place who voted Remain in the EU referendum in the east of England.
Yeah.
We've got a Reform County Council, a Green City Council. But I just think restore reform. And for me, Kemi Badenoch, I'll start with Kemi Badenoch and the Conservative. I think Kemi Badenoch is the right person at the wrong time, right?
In what way, if I can ask?
Well, I think she's a good leader. I think she wants to do things, and I think she's quite sincere in what she says. But I think the political party that she leads, after 14 years of them in power, is going to take quite some time before I think they get anywhere near the lever of powers, to be honest with you.
It's interesting, isn't it? Can I just pick up on that? Because they talk about her personal poll ratings as an individual being quite good, but that's not necessarily translating itself into support for her party. And I mean, I was on Talk yesterday and someone made the point that until she gets rid of people in her shadow cabinet who are part of the last Conservative government, people like Priti Patel, and people like that, the public are going to go, well, have you really changed?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, I just think the Conservative Party are done, to be honest with you. And, I'm seriously looking at reform and thinking to myself, the reform. I just think Nigel Farage has filled up reform with ex-Tories, and they are all the people that I voted against. Yeah, I mean, they go on about, I remember his name now.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because Jenrick is a really good example. I mean, I've got a personal view on Jenrick that his conversion into being someone who is a proper right winger was very quick and remarkable, and that's as far as I'll go at the moment. But what is interesting about Nigel's decision to allow in former Conservatives, he received a lot of criticism and has done in the past that his party doesn't have experience of government. So he will say, and he said this in press conferences, and I think it's really interesting, which is, well, he can't win, can he? Because if you want to get people who've been experienced in government, he's going to have to go to the Conservative Party when there are people who were in government there and say, well, do you want to join Reform? And that's why you've seen Braverman, and that's why you've seen Jenrick, etc., join. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, though. But, I take the point, because I've also heard people say, well, he spends a lot of time saying the Conservatives are responsible for the state of this country and what they did over 14 years. Then he lets some former Conservative ministers into his party, and some people just go, oh, how does that work,
Well, I'll be blatantly honest. I wouldn't trust Robert Jenrick at all, right? I listened to some of the things Robert Jenrick was saying about Nigel Farage before he joined Reform. Personally, if I was in charge of a company or in charge of anything, I would not let anybody like that join me. Yeah, right, after what he said about me. I just don't trust him. I think he's a career politician, and I think he's looking to manoeuvre, probably, if things happen with his £5 million. Yeah, right? And Nigel has to resign. I think Jenrick will be up there, fighting for the leadership of the party.
I think you might be right. He's certainly a player. Barry in Norwich, great call. Thank you. 7:30 is the time. 0344 499 1000. You want to join us here on Talk as we chew over the state of the political right here in the United Kingdom. This call's in Hemel Hempstead. Mary, good morning.
Good morning, Duncan.
Morning.
I just think it's an absolute tragedy that what is happening, and I can understand that Rupert Lowe's hatred so much for Nigel Farage is completely blinding his judgment, and we're all going to suffer because of it. And Kemi Badenoch, I was warming to her. I am ex-Tory for many years, but I'm not now. I'm a member of Reform. But Kemi Badenoch, when she recently lied about things that she said with Georgia Maloney, who's now said back it was not true what she said, I think to myself, if she's going to lie about a trivial thing like that, what else is she lying about?
Well, that's really interesting. And for those who aren't too familiar with what happened, certainly the Times newspaper, I think it was, were told that Maloney said to Kemi Badenoch that she shouldn't do a deal with Nigel Farage. And since it has since been apparent that wasn't said, because Maloney's camp said, well, Georgia Maloney didn't say that. To be fair to Kemi, from what I understand, and I'm not here to go into bat for the Conservatives, it wasn't her saying that. It was someone in the Conservative Party, one of her aides, who briefed the newspaper about that. But I take your point, because it makes you wonder, where is the truth in all of this, right?
Yes, but another thing I was picking up on, what you were saying about in Middlesbrough, about the police not, really being quite ineffective many years. I don't know if any people are aware, but these are all travellers' gangs, evidently. Are they? Is it a case of they're classified as a minority, that the police have literally stood back because they're travellers?
It's first I've heard of that, I'll be honest with you, Mary. I don't know if they're related to travelling communities, some of these people causing the trouble in Middlesbrough. We'll look into that. Mary in Hemel Hempstead, thank you for your call. 0344 499 1000 is the number here at Talk for your calls. Give us a shout, we'll get you on the air, as you've heard. We'll play out your voice notes, as you've heard, and I'll read out your messages, as I'm about to do. This one from Mike, living in Spain. Where else would I want to live, Duncan? Says Mike at the end of his message, which begins with a prediction. Nigel Farage will be ditched. Just before the general election, Reform and Restore will merge with Lowe as leader, is Mike's prediction. Elsewhere, this is Susan. Hello, Suze, who says, Duncan, I'm 70 and I'm definitely leaving if Labour or a Rainbow Coalition form the next government. I'm a Reform member and I'm thinking of trying to claim political asylum in the US. Failing that, it's Portugal or Poland. Actively exploring Portugal at the moment, and it can be done. Maybe we should broaden out the conversation this morning. Listen, I love this country, right? I was born in this country. I want this country to succeed for all of us, including my daughter, right? That's what I want. I want this country to be Britain, and the Britain that I grew up in, and I don't think that's about being, someone who's looking back at the past with rose-tinted spectacles. I want this country to be great again, but increasingly I find myself thinking, with the split on the political right in this country, it's not going to happen as it currently stands. And I find myself thinking, where else could I live? But I'm in a different stage in my life with my wife and my daughter and my family. To up sticks and go somewhere else in your early 50s is a big thing to do. Where would you go? Where in the world would you go and live if you took the view that Britain is no longer for you? I mean, I find myself increasingly looking at the Isle of Man because I want to... Why are you laughing? I want to have my cake and I want to eat it, I like the idea of the Isle of Man. Have you seen what they do in their prisons there? People misbehave, they stick them in the clink for the weekend. It's brilliant. It's fantastic. I don't want to do the TT. I like the idea of being on an island. You can surround it with warships, keep people out. So anyway, where would you go? Well, that's an interesting question, but we shouldn't be having this conversation this morning about, I think Britain's done for. Where else can we go and live? We should be talking about how we can get this country back on track. And we can only do that if we have politicians on the political right who are prepared to work together. And at the moment, it doesn't look like it. So are they failing us as voters? Is the political right failing its own voters? 0344 499 1000 is the number. It's 7:35. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, 23 minutes to 8. It's Saturday Breakfast, it's Talk. I'm Duncan Barkes. I'm here through until 10 on Saturday Breakfast. From 10 this morning, it's the delightful, the delectable Alex Phillips. That's if the trains work and get her here in good time. Because as we know, and I often bang on about here on Talk, that when it comes to the trains in this country, it's a bit of roulette as to whether or not the train you get on will actually get you to your destination. As I found out yesterday when I was coming in here and actually going back. I had to go back to the south coast, and I live just on the border of West Sussex and Hampshire via Brighton because the train stopped working. Anyway, Alex here from 10 this morning. Keep your calls coming in and your messages. 0344 499 1000 about the political right in this country. Are they failing their own voters? A reminder, front page of the newspaper has got this poll, and the usual caveat applies. It's only one poll, but it shows Labour on 27%, Reform on 23%, Conservatives on 18%, Greens on 11%, Lib Dems on 10%, and Restore Britain on 5%. Also, the outcome of a teeny-weeny by-election on Thursday for a seat on Dover District Council, where everyone in the world of predicting politics with, well, it's simple, it's Dover, you know, it's at the right at the front, it's at the, the coal face of the migrant crisis. It's either going to be a Tory victory, a Reform victory, or a Restore victory. Who got in? A Green Party councillor, and people are just going, well, look, if it wasn't for Restore Britain, Reform might have done it. So we're talking about the political right in this country and how split it is. Keep your messages coming in, 0344 499 1000. In the meantime, another day, yeah, it's another day, and another story, certainly another story, about another council. Oh, it's another council. And it's about flags. I mean, I'm just sick and tired of these stories, and I think most people are. And I can't get my head around the fact that it seems to only be this country where we have people who go, oh, no, you can't display the flag of your country. I mean, if you've ever spent time in the USA, you know, in various states, I mean, you will drive down a street and you will see flags outside people's houses, the Stars and Stripes, and rightly so. And nobody bats an eyelid. But here in the UK, heaven forbid, if you want to display a Union flag, a Union Jack, or the Cross of St George. The latest place where people don't want flags flown is Weston-super-Mare, where there's a heated dispute breaking out after local authorities repeatedly removed what they claim are unauthorised St George crosses and Union Jack flags erected along the seafront. I mean, in what kind of country do you have to get permission to fly the flag of your nation? Let's get a view on this from Philip Kisley, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum. Hello, Philip.
Hi, Duncan. How you doing? All right?
Well, frankly, I'm depressed. I'm depressed and I'm miserable for all kinds of reasons, but chiefly I just can't get my head around the fact that here we are, another day, another story, all about flags, and all know you can't fly the flag of your country.
Yeah, it is the flag of the country. It isn't other flags, is it? I mean, the flag of the country, the Union flag, the Cross of St George, they are the ultimate symbols of unity, or at least they should be in the same country. We're talking about Weston-super-Mare Council here, aren't we? And I can't find any evidence of Weston-super-Mare Council. I was just looking before, taking down Palestinian flags, taking down pride flags or progress flags. Over the last decade or so, we've been festooned in public places with these identitarian flags, okay? And it feels as though that kind of ideology is absolutely okay. But for these little tin pot Hitlers, these people who are running these places, and running them into the ground as well, the national flag is somehow divisive and wicked. Weston-super-Mare, certainly the town centre is characterised, I've written it down here, it sounds like I'm quoting William Beveridge, but I'm not. High unemployment, low income, economic inactivity, child poverty, substance abuse, homelessness, and high use of food banks. That is their priority, Duncan. That is what they are supposed to be dealing with. Instead, they are flaunting their identity politics. They are hating Britain. They are hating the country. And it's just, as you say, it's tiring, it's exhausting, but we're fed up.
It is tiring, and as you rightly point out, there are a lot of social and economic issues locally that this council and these tin pot councillors should be addressing, right? But instead, they seem to be focusing all of their energy on saying to people, no, you can't have that flag on the seafront for all kinds of reasons. And it's always, when you dig into it, Philip, it's always either a Green council, a Labour council, or in this case, a Lib Dem council.
Yes, they work as an homogenous whole against the rest of the population, don't they? And if you look at what some of the people from Weston-super-Mare have been saying, they are saying essentially what I've just said, that, you know, we want these flags, they're colourful, they're attractive, and they just represent a much needed sense of pride. And I'm not talking about ideological pride here. I'm talking about real pride. We should be proud of our country. We should be proud of where we're from. And that doesn't mean bigotry or xenophobia. It just means love of place. And if we have that, well, then we can inculcate all sorts of different things, particularly in our children. And thinking about what's happening in other towns and cities across the country, particularly Middlesbrough, we desperately need that. We desperately need young people connected to the country and indeed loving the country.
Well, yeah, it is. You're right. It's all about pride, isn't it? And what's interesting here is that this situation has escalated, it appears, when Caroline Reynolds, the Lib Dem Deputy Mayor of Weston-super-Mare Town Council, directly confronted members of the groups when they were putting up the flags. And there's a video that's been shared online. She stated that the unauthorised displays send an unwelcoming message to residents and visitors, adding that the council would continue to take them down as long as they are erected without permission. Now, sometimes the argument is, well, you know, it upsets some people seeing these flags because it is associated with what some might call the far right in this country, and the flag has been hijacked. I find myself saying, well, if it's been hijacked and you believe that, this is an argument to take it back and use it as a positive symbol for life in Britain, not just to go, well, this flag has been hijacked and it might upset some people. And that's before you get into the whole area that only seems to be in this country, and I don't know of any other country, where displaying your country's flag is such a problem.
Indeed, and it really doesn't equate with the far right. The national flag does not equate with the far right. The national flag is quite simply the national flag. And this doesn't say anything about the people that are putting up the flag, other than that they're proud of their country and they want to do something about their pretty shoddy environment. Yeah. What it says a lot about is the people who are desperate try and take it down. They are negative. They hate the place and they despise the people who are trying to make it better. So everything's upended there, isn't it? We have a council that is stroppy, that is miserable, that is negative. And we have the people of Weston-super-Mare simply trying to make the place a bit brighter. And if you send a positive message, it's just one of love. It's nothing else. You don't have to be English to actually enjoy and love the national flag. You just need to be able to live here and participate in the culture. It's about bigger questions of being involved and belonging, isn't it? And I think that's really what this is about. The heart of this debate is, what are we doing in this country and how can we make it better? And this is just a symbol of that attempt.
Absolutely. And you alluded to this earlier. The problem with making decisions like this and getting these flags taken down is that it feeds into this narrative that we live in a two-tier country and a two-tier society, because you can be rest assured, if there was someone who wanted to display a flag to show their support of the Palestinian cause, for example, I suspect this particular council would have a very different view. So you find yourself just going, well, you know, they've got this two-tier attitude towards flags. If it's a flag they like, it can be displayed. If it's a flag they don't like, it has to come down.
Absolutely, and they're obsessed with flags as well, don't forget. The last 10 years, the left, the only way the left have been able to communicate is through the medium of flags, for God's sake. So they have a real issue with this kind of stuff because they're very, very invested in it. Again, it just comes down to a very simple expression of love for place, love for country, and love for culture. And this is actually inclusive. If you do not think the national flag is an inclusive symbol, then the problem is you. The problem is not the flag, and it's not the ordinary people. These are not far right. They're not racist as far as I can see. They are just ordinary people, the people of Weston-super-Mare, who just want to make the place a little bit better. And this is a gesture. It's a cry for help as much as anything, because the council is obviously failing. Look, Weston-super-Mare Council, just do your job. Forget about the flags. Do your job and make the place livable.
Philip, always a pleasure. Have a good weekend. Thank you for joining us. That's Philip Kisley, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum here on Talk. You want to pick up on this flag stuff? I mean, we talk about it often here on Talk for good reason. 0344 499 1000. I just don't understand why it is so problematic to display your country's flag in the United Kingdom. Call me, WhatsApp me or voice note me. It's coming home. What's coming home? Sarah Ferguson. We'll talk about this in a few moments' time with Rupert Bell, Talk's royal correspondent here on Saturday Breakfast.
I do not care about Meghan and Harry. I do not care at all. Not a gnat's backside, do I? Not at all. If they walked in this room, I'd say, get out. I don't care about Meghan and Harry. Can I put that any more emphatically? I do not care. I love Angela Levin, but I don't care about Meghan and Harry, all right? It doesn't keep me awake at night. I don't wake up in the morning going, I wonder what Megs is up to. Never, ever does it cross my mind. I don't give a hoot about Meghan and Harry.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
10 minutes to 8, Saturday Breakfast. I'm Duncan Barkes. This is Talk, the home of common sense. It's coming home. No, not that. This. Fergie, Sarah Ferguson, is coming back to the United Kingdom, the ex-wife of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Front page of the Sun newspaper this morning. First Harry and Meg, now Fergie's coming home. It turns out she's heading back to Blighty and she's renting a £10,000 a week house in the home counties. Let's get a view on this from Rupert Bell, Talk's royal correspondent. Morning, Rupert.
Good morning. I suppose it's after the Harry and Meghan, the news cycle's pretty quick. Up pops the news about Sarah Ferguson. I think the eye-watering amount is, you know, people talk about her finances being a bit stretched, yet allegedly she's been seen in expensive or places in Europe, and now £10,000 a month. Well, that's £120,000 a year for a 6-bedroom house, so the Sun report. So you've got to think, well, where she's got the money, because, or is someone bankrolling her to enable her to return to the UK and perhaps be near her children and be the grandmother that I'm sure she would like to be.
Yeah, well, that's the obvious question, isn't it? Because we know from some of the leaked messages, the dispatches shared between her and the disgraced financier and paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, that she was often asking in not so subtle ways for a bit of cash. So it does make you wonder where this cash is coming from and who's funding her.
Well, exactly. I mean, there are reports, and again, can't confirm this, but obviously her late mentor was a guy called Paddy McNally, and he may have passed on some money, we don't know, that has enabled her to continue, to return to this country in what would most people, I say, well, why does she need a 6-bedroom cottage and at £120,000 a year? Doesn't suggest that she's needs to watch the pennies. So what can all we know, she's coming back. I think in her case, I think she will be struggling to get the oxygen of publicity, because now we know she's back. I don't know what else, where do we go with this, unless it's related to any further revelations that might come out from the Epstein files. But so that's really where her life is at the moment. It doesn't sound a great deal of fun. Of course, her ex-husband, well, he's obviously holed up in Sandringham at the moment. Still police investigations going into his life at the moment. But again, I suppose it takes some of the heat off the Harry and Meghan return, who by all accounts, and the chattering classes in North Cotswolds are getting exercised by the fact that they may be returning to this part of the world where I live in, and maybe one of the local schools is already geared up to receive them. And bearing in mind, they too have got to spend quite a lot of money to go to one of the private schools. At senior level, it's about £22,000 a year. So if the school that potentially could be theirs in the North Cotswolds.
Just returning to Fergie for a bit, Rupert. I mean, the Sun this morning saying that she's been in exile over the last several months. I mean, particularly she disappeared off the scene following the numerous allegations against Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Do we know where she's been?
Well, there's talk that she was in Switzerland, Austria, various places. So we don't know, but I think she had to keep a low profile, because obviously when all the news came about her sort of pleading for money and, you know, and actually in many ways for the sake of her children, to keep a low profile, because I'm sure it created quite a lot of tension within the families of both Princess Beatrice and Eugenie, given all the news that was coming out. And it was pretty unedifying, how needy she looked. So keeping a low profile was probably a very prudent thing to do. Just stay out of the headlines. Now, coming back here to the UK, she obviously feels that there has been a little bit of distance and that she can now return. And again, as I say, I'm not sure. Will there be a feeding frenzy wanting to find out? I think people might be curious as to how she's funding her lifestyle. But if she can and she is able to, then you also want to say as well, OK, that's fine. But again, she has always courted controversy. So she may be looking to find ways to generate income. And where could that be? What could that be? That would be something maybe the royal family wouldn't be wanting another book, a Sarah Ferguson Revelation style book, bearing in mind that she has probably got plenty of fodder, but she has always been quite discreet as far as that is concerned.
Well, let's just enlarge on that a little bit. I mean, what do you think the reaction will be to the news on the front page of The Sun that Fergie's coming home from members of the royal family? Will they just be, like, raising their eyebrows in despair?
Well, I don't. They'll just be going, oh, here we, you know, they'll just be hoping she stays quiet.
Right.
I think that would be, you know, whereas it does seem to be a little harder to keep the other two quiet, who do seem to be drip feeding information continuously to favoured outlets. Whereas I think Sarah Ferguson will want to keep a low profile and just try and get some normality into her life again. And I don't think she's going to be. you'd hope not anyway, won't be another headache for the royal family. Her ex-husband is a huge headache for the royal family, and at the same time, Meghan and Harry are also another headache. So they don't need a third one right now.
Yeah, and you can make the argument that, I mean, given potentially the life she's led, what she knows about the royals, compared to Harry and Meghan, she has been remarkably discreet up until now. And I suppose that's something we should give her credit for.
I think you do. And I think, you know, they did. It was always, they knew, and maybe that was why they put up with the slightly strange living arrangement. You know, there she was living at Royal Lodge. The royal family were thinking, right, we need to keep her on side. And I think there was an element of that, because she did know what was going on, probably, and might have made it uncomfortable reading or viewing for members of the royal family. Now, again, this is all speculation, but I do think she has tried to, on that side of things, be quite restrained. But it's her other aspects of her life where she does seem to have sort of gone off like a loose cannon at times, and has put her foot in it on numerous occasions. And again, the needy letters to Jeffrey Epstein and everything, a testament to probably her sometimes lack of judgment. And that has created problems for the royal family and indeed her ex-husband. But he's created some of that himself, and there's no two ways about it. But I do feel a degree of sympathy for Eugenie and Beatrice, that they have been caught up in their parents' slightly sort of, seems at times, seedy lifestyle.
And what kind of reputation do you think Fergie has left? I mean, you touched on, you know, this idea that she might need to find ways of making money. I mean, is there, in terms of reputational damage, is it beyond repair? And what do you think the mood of the nation is in terms of its attitude towards Sarah Ferguson?
I think there's probably, with Sarah Ferguson, I think it's just, oh, here we go again, sort of eye-rolling, and not giving it, you know, I don't think she's going to change the dial in the thought processes of the country. Whereas the Meghan and Harry one does have, because of what was said, the much more open and at times vitriolic goes at the royal family, the sort of levels of hypocrisy in many cases with Sarah Ferguson, it's okay, what's she going to do now? And it's just, so here we go again, but not, I don't think, to any degree that you would find with the reaction to Harry and Meghan. It's probably, in Maine, if we walk down the street today, most people will go, okay, well, that's fine, she's back, and move on. I think, well, that's certainly my take on it, and I think that would be generally, I hope I'm tapping into the zeitgeist here on the Sarah Ferguson, but I may be wrong. But I think that's a bit of news, but I think we'll be back on the Harry and Meghan saga pretty quickly next week, because he'll be making appearances, I think, at Well Child, is something that he's very involved in. And is very respected within that organisation.
I think you're right, Rupert. I think he's going to dominate the headlines as of next week. Listen, a pleasure to get your thoughts as always. Rupert Bell, Talk's royal correspondent, here on Saturday Breakfast, responding to the news that Sarah Ferguson is coming home. I'm Duncan Barkes. Keep your calls coming in, 0344 499 1000. It's a Saturday morning. It's Talk Breakfast through until 10.
Californian cash machine is out.
The ATM, the American ATM.
The American ATM has run out of dollar bills. And I think it's we really need to look at why they have done it and why now, because in my mind is very hasty.
This is breaking news. Meghan Markle is in talks, apparently, to return to acting with a role in Guy Ritchie's Netflix series, The Gentleman. But that would be pretty embarrassing for her, wouldn't it? Pretty humiliating.
I think it's undignified if you marry into the royal family. If you're in entertainment or something like that, actually, I think it's a very undignified thing, and I don't think that you should do it.
I think it's about money, and I think it's about position. I don't think so. I think it's sad that they're using, in a way, the children in this respect, because if this is not permanent, you shouldn't be moving kids out of schools at 5 and 7. You've got to act a bit more responsibly than that. So it looks like if they are enrolling them in the schools, it can't have happened on Sunday. It can't have been, these things, you can be Mick Jagger. You can't just ring up a school and say, I want to take my kids to joining you on such and such a date. There are procedures to enroll.
I think the kids are the answer to the whole thing. You're absolutely right, Julia. They're looking at the future. They're, as someone rather savagely described them, they're now middle-aged and not very interesting anymore. So
God, if they're middle-aged, what the hell how the hell are we still surviving?
Does anybody actually care? Does anybody... Am I the only... I do not care about Meghan and Harry. I do not care at all. Not a gnat's backside, do I? Not at all. I don't care about Meghan and... I do not care about Meghan and Harry. If they walked in this room, I'd say, get out! I don't care about Meghan and Harry. Can I put that any more emphatically? I do not care. I love Angela Levin, but I don't care about Meghan and Harry, all right? It doesn't keep me awake at night. I don't wake up in the morning going, I wonder what Megs is up to. Never, ever does it cross my mind. I don't give a hoot about Meghan and Harry. Also this afternoon, Meghan and Harry have arrived in the... No, we're not going to do that, OK? I promise you. Have we made that clear?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, 3 minutes past 8, Saturday breakfast. I'm Duncan Barkes. I'm here through until 10 on the home of common speech. If you're listening or watching in England, Wales, Northern Ireland, hope you're looking forward to the bank holiday weekend. If you're in Scotland, well, it's business as normal. Wherever you're watching or listening in the UK, good to have you along. Some of the stories that you're waking up to this morning in the United Kingdom on the front pages of our newspapers. The iWeekend has a political story with the headline, Burn and Bounce, Labour leapfrogs Farage in polls after he loses voters to Restore. This is talking about the off the back, that's the phrase I'm looking for, of the Dover District Council by-election that took place on Thursday. Let's put this into context. I mean, a really small by-election for a seat on the council in Dover. But what is interesting about it is everyone thought it was either going to be the Tories or Restore Britain or Reform UK who would take it, because Dover is at a coalface, the cusp of the illegal migrant crisis, because that's where a lot of people arrive when they cross the channel. But it was won by the Green Party, this particular by-election. So Dover District Council now has a new Green councillor. Good luck to them, he says, tongue-in-cheek. And people are going, well, if Restore Britain hadn't stood, Reform could have taken the seat. Reform should have, on paper, won that seat. So that's fueling this front page, alongside some research that the newspaper has commissioned nationally, and it shows that there is a burn and bounce with the Labour Party currently sitting on 27%, then Reform on 23%, then the Tories on 18%, then you've got the Greens on 11%, Lib Dems on 10%, and Restore on 5%. And people going, well, if Restore didn't exist as a party, that and those votes all went to Reform, which kind of is what majority of people think. I don't necessarily think it's that simple, but it would have Reform beating Labour. So once again gets us into this whole area about a split on the right of British politics. And that's our question to you this morning. Is the political right failing its own voters with all of these different parties who won't talk to each other? 0344 499 1000 for your calls, your WhatsApps and your voice notes. Anyway, that's the front page of the Daily Mirror talks about King Charles, who's written to the families of the 2 police officers killed in the A66 horror crash in Middlesbrough. We'll talk about the escalating and ongoing situation in Middlesbrough with Peter Belexley in a few moments' time here on Talk. But that's the front page of the Mirror. Daily Star talks about the embarrassment to society that is Joey Essex. Is that too harsh? I mean, this man is what? How old is he now? Is Joey Essex? Hang on a sec. Do we know how old he is? 36. So he was in The Only Way is Essex, right? Which is still on the telly. I don't know if anyone watches it. I mean, you know, I haven't watched it for years. Does it still have Gemma Collins in at all? No. I have a bit of a soft spot for Gemma Collins. I mean, I think she'd be good for a few pints and a kebab, don't you? Perhaps no? Right, OK, I'll move on. So Joey Essex is on the front page of the Star, and he says, I still can't tell the time. Do you remember that this was his famed thing? The only thing he was known for. And he's on the front page of the paper saying, despite being 36, he still doesn't know how to tell the time, which is just a bit embarrassing. I'm not convinced it's true. I think it's just part of his act, because no one can be that thick, can they? Daily Telegraph this morning, America's Falklands threat to Britain. The paper's reporting that the US has threatened to oppose British sovereignty over the Falklands Islands if Andy Burnham does not increase defence spending. Daily Express this morning, Burnham vows to stay out of assisted dying vote. The Prime Minister has pledged not to intervene in the MP's vote on legalising assisted dying in a major boost for campaigners. Remember, the Express is well behind a campaign to get assisted dying legalised in the United Kingdom. Elsewhere, the Daily Mail, surrender is the headline. John Healey quit in protest at Starmer's refusal to spend 3% of GDP on defence by 2030. Remember, John Healey was Defence Secretary, then he quit because he said, well, there's not going to be enough money for defence. Now he's Chancellor under Andy Burnham, and apparently he's shelved the same target. Remember, folks, there's a budget on the 28th of October. It just makes you wonder whether or not he quit as Defence Secretary. That's just a way of getting rid of Starmer, and maybe because he was promised a plum job under Burnham. The Times this morning, Prime Minister warned over stupid tax raid on capital gains. This is an economic advisor who Andy Burnham reportedly has been courting for a while to join his team, but he's refused, and he's warning the Prime Minister that increasing taxes on wealth in the budget would be stupid because it would encourage entrepreneurs to leave the country and damage economic growth. Elsewhere, the FT's got a defence story regarding John Healey. Healey to defer defence spend target is their take on that story. The Guardian talks about the tragedy in Nepal, and the Sun newspaper, as you might have heard if you've been listening inside the last 20 minutes, talks about Sarah Ferguson, Fergie, coming home after months in exile. The ex-wife of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor reportedly is renting a £10,000 a week house in the home counties. Fergie is coming home. The question is, where is the money coming from? 8 minutes past 8. It's a Saturday morning. I'm Duncan Barkes. It's Saturday breakfast through until 10. Let's talk about some of the scenes and some of the reports coming out of Middlesbrough, the town in the northeast of England that's been in the headlines for all of the wrong reasons for the last 7 days. Joining us is Peter Blexley, former Met Police detective. Morning, Peter.
Good morning.
Always a pleasure to get your wisdom on such things. I mean, we've seen some scenes in the last 7 days coming out of Middlesbrough. The Sun newspaper this morning has this, we call it in the business, a splash across 2 pages with the headline, The Untouchables. And that refers to claims that there are untouchables controlling the streets of Middlesbrough. That claim is made by the former mayor of the town, Andy Preston. And you can't help but conclude, when you look at some of these pictures, that the police have lost control.
Much of what I've been reading this week has taken me back to my days of policing. And forgive me if I just lament a little while, to the late 1980s, the early 1990s, when there were 2 warring families in southeast London. And what they were warring over was, of course, the illegal drugs industry, fighting over the turf, fighting over the profits, fighting over the control. But along the way, these 2 warring families had a habit of shooting each other because they really, really were sworn enemies. Occasionally people would survive, occasionally people would die. And it was very difficult to gather the evidence against these families because they were very good at intimidating entire communities into not giving evidence. And consequently, trying to find witnesses was very, very difficult. So a lot of experienced detectives got their heads together and said, how are we going to deal with this matter? And it was suggested that it might be easier to catch them for the wholesale international drug dealing that they were up to, rather than pursuing the murders. Now, that wasn't to ignore the murders, but it was just felt focus on the drugs. And there's a lesson to be learned for all the people in Middlesbrough who are desperately trying to quell this rampant criminality and would probably like to see a lot of people locked up. Get them for the crimes that you will be able to find the evidence, charge them, get them in front of a court and sent away. And that, in my experience and in my opinion, would be the illegal drugs.
Is there an issue around what's been happening in Middlesbrough around police resources? Because I was doing a show yesterday on Talk, and a few people we spoke to were making the point that if there were enough police available, you could almost sweep the town and clear it up in a way that most law-abiding citizens would like. But a few people were suggesting that maybe the police don't have the adequate resources to do that.
Policing is so often a numbers game, and they probably don't have the officers to do that. And besides, even if you do, once all the additional officers that might be drafted in, and we know that 200 extra officers are going to Cleveland, what happens when they've all gone back to their home forces? The drug dealing starts again. I'm glad that the Sun actually have reported today that drugs have been seized. They're hinting that it is the drugs industry, because that is the major factor behind all of this criminality. Of that, I am absolutely convinced. It's turf wars, it's drug wars, it's fighting over the profits, because these people don't want to go to work every day. They don't want to get up early, get to work, put in a proper shift and earn a legal pound note or three. No, they're lazy. They want to earn money through the drugs industry, where there is so much money for very little effort. But of course, when that industry, which is entirely unregulated, has disputes within it, when people fall out with one another, what do? They turn to violence, because violence is the currency of the illegal drugs industry. And this is where we find ourselves.
Just give us a sense this morning, Peter, if you'd be kind enough, behind the psychology of some of these gang members, because I'm struck by some of the pictures in today's Sun where we have a couple of cars that were set alight in a field, which apparently were a tribute to one of the gangland members, or one of the gang members who lost his life. These cars torched in his memory by thugs. I mean, that seems to me just to be literally sending two fingers up to the local police.
It all starts with dreadful or non-existent parenting. These people are raised into criminality. They're born into criminality. They think they can just go through their lives doing exactly as they want. They are not disciplined. They are not respectful. They are not educated. They are absolute vermin, and they've been raised by vermin. And so the cycle goes on and on and on. What do you think these young people who are torching cars, setting off flares and balloons, what kind of children do you think they're going to raise? Because they will have children. They'll probably ignore them. They won't discipline them. They won't raise them to be educated, contributing members of society who work hard, pay their taxes, abide by the laws of the land, and contribute to their communities. No, they're utter scum. And I wish the police all the very best of luck in rounding them up, gathering evidence, taking them to court and sending them away. That's where they belong, behind bars.
More from Peter Blexley, former Met Police detective, in a few moments' time, because we're going to get Peter's thoughts on the Notting Hill Carnival that's happening this weekend in part of West London. We'll do that in a few moments' time. Just a reminder, my big question this morning is a little bit political, but I think it's about the future of this country. And if you just put us on, firstly, thank you. Secondly, this is the question: is the political right failing its own voters as we see the political parties on the right of the spectrum in this country, namely Reform UK, Restore Britain and the Conservatives, kind of splitting the right of centre vote? Are they failing voters by not finding a way of working together? And when I talk about the future of this country, my personal fear is that this country cannot afford, both economically and socially, another left-wing socialist government in Downing Street, OK? And unless the right of the political spectrum sort themselves out, that's exactly what's going to happen. So tell me this: is the political right failing its own voters? 0344 499 1000 for your thoughts on that. Call me, we'll talk later. WhatsApp me, I'll read your message out. Voice note me, we'll play it out. And alongside that, another story about flags not being allowed to be displayed in this country. It just beggars belief that this seems to be the only country in the world, by my reckoning, where if you want to display your country's flag, some tin pot local councillor comes along and says, you can't do that. The latest is in Weston-super-Mare. So tell me, why is flying or displaying our flag your flag such a problem? 0344 499 1000 is the number. It's Saturday Breakfast, it's Talk, it's 8:15.
I do not care about Meghan and Harry. I do not care at all. Not a gnat's backside, do I? Not at all. If they walked in this room, I'd say, get out. I don't care about Meghan and Harry. Can I put that any more emphatically? I do not care. I love Angela Levin, but I don't care about Meghan and Harry, all right? It doesn't keep me awake at night. I don't wake up in the morning going, I wonder what Megs is up to. Never, ever does it cross my mind. I don't give a hoot about Meghan and Harry.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's 18 minutes past 8, Saturday morning. This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Duncan Barkes. Alongside me, Peter Blexley, former Met Police detective. Peter, this weekend, it's the Notting Hill Carnival. I note with interest it's the 60th anniversary, and already homeowners and local businesses in the postcode of W10 in West London are boarding up their properties and businesses, which we see every year. Now, people say to me, if this was any other event, it wouldn't be allowed to go ahead in its current form, given the amount of arrests that take place and also violence that happens as well. Why does it continue to be allowed to happen, do you think?
Because the police simply will not either ban it, which would probably be impossible, or insist that it is moved. And it should be moved. I don't want to see this carnival cancelled because a lot of people do enjoy it. But let's look at some statistics, if we may. 500 arrests last year. Some for violence, rape, stabbings, 8 stabbings last year. Already this year, the police have seized 100 knives and prevented a number of people from going to the carnival, including a gang from Manchester who were known to be violent and disruptive. The policing bill for last year was nearly £16 million, and that figure will be even bigger this year because the Metropolitan Police are deploying 7,000 police officers. If this event was such a joyous celebration of culture, why do you need 7,000 police officers to police it? And the reason they need that number of officers is because a lot of people go there intent on committing crime, whether it be sexual assault, rape, of course, murders do happen. There wasn't a murder, thankfully, last year, but there was the year before. Stabbings galore. Drug dealing, it's just a drug dealing orgy, and so much more crime. Anyway, we shall have to wait and see what happens. There will be violence, particularly on the Sunday night. I hope nobody loses their life, but they probably will, and so it goes.
And just give our listeners and viewers a sense of the kind of policing operation that'll be in place for an event like this. And also, you know, my heart always goes out, Peter, to the people on the front line who've got to go to this event, right? Because they must be walking on a tightrope. I mean, there's got to be a lot of sympathy for the men and women on the front line who've got to police this event every year.
Yes, they do have a degree of sympathy from me, but of course some of them stupidly fraternise, dance, and make themselves look like utter clowns. Aside from all the crime that I mentioned earlier, one of the major fears of the Notting Hill Carnival is that there will be a mass casualty event, because a lot of the streets around this part of London are narrow. People are funneled through these streets in huge numbers. And the big concern for a lot of people is that there will be a crushed type event with a huge number of casualties. Of course, I sincerely hope that no such event does occur, but that's part of the reason why they've got so many officers as they try, let's hope successfully, to prevent an event like that from actually happening.
Peter, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you. Peter Bleksley, former Met Police detective, the real voice of common sense here in the United Kingdom. Every time we have Peter on,
thanks for having me.
we get messages from people just going, that man should be Home Secretary of this country. And I wouldn't disagree. 8:22 is the time. Let's get some of your reaction coming in on the message screen and also your calls and voice notes as well. We've been talking about flags and the latest group of tin pot councillors in Weston-super-Mare in Somerset, the seaside town of Weston-super-Mare, saying you can't display flags, the Union Jack flag, the St George's Cross. And I'm asking people, why is it such a problem? Why is it such a problem in this country? No one else seems to have a problem with it. Some messages coming in. This one here from Stuart. Duncan, at the end of the day, we patriots who love our country, our people, and its flags seem to be outnumbered by various people in the country who don't and never will, so uniting the people and saving the country looks like an impossibility. So we need to make other plans. What, like leave? It goes back to what I was saying earlier. Where do you go? This one from Lisa. The reason I think people want to now display our flag is not to make the place look nicer. As your guest Philip stated in the last hour, it's deeper than that. It's like a marker in the sand. I think many people have had enough. This one here from Mike. On a recent trip to Turkey, the flag is everywhere, especially on a riverside port where hundreds of Turkish flags were proudly flying about the boats. It looked amazing, and I took lots of photos. We told the locals how lovely it was to see, and they couldn't believe what I told them about the issues when we fly our flag in the United Kingdom. And this is Stephen in Edinburgh, who says, why don't folk put the flags up in their window to show their pride in it? Surely they can't stop anyone doing that, says Stephen in Edinburgh. Well, this would be an interesting experiment, wouldn't it? I would put money on the fact that if people started putting up the Union Jack or the Union flag or the Cross of St George in their windows en masse in a neighbourhood, I would give it probably a day and a half before there was a knock on the door, probably from someone from the police, certainly from a local council, just saying we've had complaints. In fact, I would guarantee that would happen. And that's part of the problem, isn't it? 8:24 is the time. Let's take some voice notes regarding the state of the political right in this country. This is Joan.
Rupert Lowe doesn't give a toss about the country. All he's interested in is getting back at Nigel Farage. It's pathetic. He should step down and let them get on with it. He's going to ruin this country. Joan from Southport.
Well, Joan, thank you. Rupert Lowe, of course, is the one MP and the leader of Restore Britain. He was the Reform UK MP. He appeared to fall out with Nigel Farage, went away, set up his own movement, Restore Britain, that has now turned into a political party. A lot of people here who contribute to talk in terms of messages and stuff do believe that he is right to have his political party and certainly is offering an alternative to other political parties. But Joan, not so convinced. This is a voice note regarding the state of the UK. This is Richard.
Morning, Duncan. Middlesbrough, it's been allowed to happen. The police are more bothered about hurty-turty words. What gender are you? Are you wearing pink? Have you got your Lombard on? Have you done this? Have you done that? why the country burns, same as the migrants. Have they been told to stand down? Why the Navy, the police and the RNLI just watch it all happen. The MPs watch it all happen. Everyone watches it all happen while Rome burns. Makes you wonder, don't it, whether it's been allowed and planned and planned. Sorry to moan, Duncan, but we don't need 5 hours telling us what we already knew a year ago. Have a beautiful Saturday. Richard from Leicester.
Oh, Richard in Leicester, I'm feeling even more despondent and despairing. I'm only teasing. Look, it's cathartic. You don't have to apologise for moaning, because I feel the same. But the question is, what the hell do we do about it? What can be done about it? Do we put our trust and faith in politicians on the right of the political landscape to come together so we can get this country back on track? Or do we just give up and just go, well, that's it? You know, Britain is done for. You talk about watching Rome burn. I get that completely. It does feel like it's 5 minutes to midnight in this country. 8:26 is the time. 0344 499 1000 for your voice notes, as you've heard. You can WhatsApp me and you can call me, which is what Jackie in Whitstable's done. Hello, Jack.
Oh, hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's about time, isn't it? We learnt from the past. Do you remember some years ago, UKIP took votes from the other parties, mostly Conservative, stopped them winning in various seats, and instead of joining forces and being sensible about it, we had, I think it was David Cameron, calling UKIP voters swivel-eyed loons. Well,
he called them, you're right. I mean, instead of trying to... Was it fruitcakes, racists and swivel-eyed loons? Was that the phrase?
That's it.
Yeah.
And the Conservatives didn't sort of reach out to UKIP. We were losing seats. We were never going to win. Farage actually did the decent thing for Boris. And while Boris would have won it anyway, he got an 80-seat majority. Now, come on, the right's got to do something. The left, of course, will. They will get behind whichever loony left party is going to win, and they'll all vote for them. We saw it in Macclesfield, didn't we? So, for goodness sake, bang your heads together. I understand reform. I understand they're cross with the Conservatives. But the Conservative Party, I'm afraid, over the years, has been infiltrated by Remainer liberals. And this is their problem. Get back to being proper Conservatives. Join up with reform.
Well, let me ask you a question, Jackie, if I may, because when we talk about proper Conservatives, what would be your definition of proper conservatism?
Well, I've been a Conservative for a long time, and I've been a councillor, etc., etc. And when we had new candidates come in, we had to interview them. I always asked the question, why are you a Conservative? And I sum it up in one sentence. I like freedom and opportunity over oppression and hatred. And that's why I am a Conservative. It's simple.
It should be that simple, you're right. And alongside that, minimal state intervention, low taxation, robust borders, robust defence of this nation. That means investing in planes and warships. I mean, what successive governments have done to our Royal Navy really is a dereliction of duty. Jackie in Whitstable, thank you for your excellent call. 0344 499 1000. I wonder, and I'm just going to float this. I'm not making a point. I'm just taking my thoughts for a walk. I wonder if Kemi and Nigel and Rupert really understand how angry the British public will be if our next government ends up to be a form of socialism on steroids as a result of the political right in this country being so split. Do you think they have any idea? 0344 499 1000. 8:30 is the time. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Saturday breakfast, it's Talk, the home of common sense. This is Duncan Barkes. I'm here through until 10. Alex Phillips here from 10 o'clock this morning here at Talk. In a few moments, we're going to talk to Matthew Goodwin Freeman, Conservative councillor in Harrow. Now, he's a man who often appears here on Talk, either with a Union Jack or a Union flag behind him, or even wearing one. And we'll get his thoughts on this flag stuff. If you just put us on this morning, yet another day and yet another story about a council that don't like flags of this country being flown. There's someone who drinks in my local pub. I'm not going to name him, and I'm going to use a term here that he uses. I think I can say this. Dave, if I can't say this, you'll press the right button, OK? But I think it's all right. I think it's all right. He says anyone who wants to display the flag of this country, so either the Union flag or the Cross of St George, is a flag shagger. It's all right, isn't it? We can use that term. It's all right. And I find it's... I don't have an argument with him because I go out to have a quiet pint. I'm not interested in having an argument with some bloke in the pub. But I find it really demeaning, this idea that for some reason there's a mindset in this country that you can't display your country's flag. And the latest example is happening in Weston-super-Mare, where we have a council that are taking them down. And I'm asking you, just why is this such a problem? And it seems to be this country. If you go elsewhere, the United States of America being a great example, it really isn't a problem. You see it outside people's houses. You know, if I was to erect a flagpole, not that I've got a front garden, or I don't have a front garden, I don't really have a back garden, but if I were to erect a flagpole and fly a flag, I mean, you know, there would be a knock at the door, wouldn't there? Someone would complain. Someone would complain. What is it about the mentality in this country about our flags? Let's take a call on this. Nigel is in Middlesbrough. Good morning.
Morning, Duncan.
What would you like to say, sir?
It's about this flag flying.
Yeah.
Not about the violence in Middlesbrough, for one. These councils are taking the flags down. They're getting put back up. They get tucked back down. I've noticed they leave the old flags up, what have all been up a couple of years, all raggy. Me and quite a few of my mates think, have they been racist against British people? Why don't they like us flying the flag? This is racism.
You think it's a form of racism? So the fact that you and I couldn't...
people,
against the British people.
Not just white British people, because some of my friends are black and white, all races.
Well, it doesn't matter what colour. You're born in this country, you're British. You want to display your flag of your country's origin, you should be able to do so. So you would make the argument that if a council comes along and says, no, you can't have that flag, take it down, you would say they're being racist towards the people of this country?
Yes, I would, yeah.
It's interesting, that. Well, where do you think... Give me some thoughts here, Nigel, on where you think this attitude comes from. And I mentioned this a few moments ago, that, you know, other countries around the world don't have a problem with this. It does seem to be Britain. It seems to be the United Kingdom, where you get these tin pot councillors who go, oh, no, you can't do that. Where do you think that mentality comes from?
It comes from the councillors trying to get certain votes to vote them in for the council.
Oh, what, you think that they're trying to appeal to a certain part of the community?
Yes, I do. I think I know it's that anyway. Because they don't allow flags flown in certain parts of Middlesbrough, but certain parts, where they just don't take them down. And certain parts, the town centre, they've took them all down.
Right, interesting. Interesting to get your thoughts on that. And listen, you can't let me let you go without asking you about your town at the moment, because it is in the headlines for all of the wrong reasons. I'm not necessarily expecting you to tell me about what you know about gangland activity in Middlesbrough, but just tell me, as someone who lives in Middlesbrough, how it makes you feel at the moment when you keep hearing about your town making the headlines for all of the wrong reasons.
The wrong reasons. Yes, it's not good. I grew up with it, really, because I've lived here for 61 years, so used to it, but not good at all.
All right. Listen, have a good day, mate. That's Nigel in Middlesbrough. 8:36 is the time. Let's talk to Matthew Goodwin Freeman, Conservative councillor. Morning.
Morning, how are you?
Well, I'm all right, but you've let me down here, Matt, because I was saying earlier, normally when you appear... Don't shake your head. You haven't know what I'm saying here. Normally when you... Oh, there it is.
There.
OK, well, you were...
I've got a flag here.
All right, well, do me a favour.
I can wear it on me if you want me to. There you go. Let's crack on.
He's getting a bit leery. For those people who didn't hear earlier, I said normally he appears on Talk, particularly if you're watching on YouTube, with a Union flag somewhere. And when you first came on, to be fair to me, I couldn't see anything, all right, because you're in front of your Union flag mug. And now you've redeemed yourselves. Listen, good to talk to you as always. What's your take on this flag story?
It's ridiculous. I mean, yes, take down the ones that look tatty and are falling apart because they were maybe, cheap from Amazon or other places. But we should be allowed to fly our flag. It's about being proud of our country. If you look at any other country in the world, they seem to have their flag everywhere and no one bats an eyelid. I think it's because we have grown up having to learn about all the bad things Britain did and all the dreadful, terrible, naughty, bad history that Britain did. Oh, sorry, but also Britain did a lot of good around the world. And actually, yes, we had the slave trade, but so did everybody else. We were the first ones to go, enough's enough, let's outlaw this, and let's police the world to stop it as well. So, you can select bits of history as much as you want and say, oh, the flag is a symbol of division and hate and slavery. But at the end of the day, it's our country's flag. And it seems the only time you're ever allowed to fly a St. George's Cross, for example, is during the football and the World Cup. Otherwise, you're clearly a racist. It's ridiculous. We should be allowed to fly our flags. I understand councils taking down the tatty ones where they've ripped in the wind or things like that. That makes sense. You want to make sure the area still looks nice. But frankly, I have no problem with anybody flying the Union flag or the St. George's Cross. If anything, I will be doing it for the day until I die.
All right, good to get your thoughts on that. Let's talk about the current sense or scene politically in the United Kingdom. We have a couple of things going on here that fuels our question this morning here on Talk about the political right in the UK and whether or not, on your part of the political right, Matthew, is failing its own voters. Now, behind this is, in one case, the result of a by-election that happened Thursday in Kent, in Dover, for a seat on Dover District Council, taken by a Green councillor because the right-wing vote was split between the Tories, Reform and Restore. We also have the front page of this morning's newspaper. They've done a poll, usual caveat, it's only one poll, but it's got Labour on 27, Reform on 23, your party, the Conservatives, on 18 and Restore on 5%. We have a problem in this country, don't we? The political right in the UK is split.
Yes, and we are not very good at tactical voting on the right wing. The left are brilliant at it, and you saw that in Wandsworth this week, where the Conservatives lost, taking a Labour vote by 127 votes. No other party kept its deposit, because that's how good the tactical vote was on the left. So we need to get better at it as a right wing. I think it's a bit rich for Reform to claim to own voters, or I saw what Restore came out and said that no one owns voters, you have to earn it. I agree with that mentality more. There are typical right-wing and left-wing voters, but we're now not in a two-party system. We're in a multi-party system. You have to earn those votes. Everyone's on a level playing field. We do have first past the post. Frankly, if you get one vote more than the next candidate, you are the winner. Yep. So in a multi-party world, we have to get out there, sell our message, vote on your principles. But I would think that the public are the ones who are ultimately going to make the decision, because when we get to a general election, we're going to have a stark choice between a right-wing government and whatever a left-wing chaos government would be with more Labour and the Greens. We are going to have to become really smart at tactical voting, looking at what seats are frankly going to be won by who, and that's where the polls matter. But right now we're, 3 years from a general election? Who knows what state the country's going to be in by then?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point, though there is a view that increasingly is getting some traction that Burnham won't wait for 3 years. He may well call an early general election, maybe in the first part of 2027. And if that were the case, your political party, according to this, equally, it's one poll, and I've made that point, that's usual caveat, it's just one poll, but it's a chunky poll for the newspaper, is currently sitting on 18%. If your party, the Conservatives, Conservatives had teamed up with Reform, they would literally annihilate Labour, and we would have essentially a centre-right government in Downing Street. As it stands at the moment, Kemi doesn't like Nigel, Nigel doesn't like Kemi, and it looks like Labour might get into government again if there were to be an early general election.
Well, Kemi said that there are no deals, and I think Nigel doesn't like any other party. He said he's not doing a deal with Restore, even though the policy, you know, the 5 points from Rupert Lowe have been there. And remember, this is all a creation of Reform's own doing. He kicked out Rupert Lowe. This started the whole thing for Restore. Look, at the end of the day, I don't think any party is going to stand down for one another. I think the voters will make the judgment. If you're in the Midlands, it's a straight fight between Conservatives and Reform. If you're up north, Reform have more of a say than the Conservatives now do. If you're on the coast, it tends to be Restore or Reform. And down here in the south and the southeast and west, it's Conservative, Lib Dem. So, like, that's sort of how the country's broken up politically on the right. So now we're living in a multi-party world. I think it's down to the voters to make that choice. Actually, who's going to win here? It's all about tactical voting. And we on the right have never been good at it. We've never really pushed it because we've always had that ego of, no, we're going to win. We're the better choice. We have to wise up to it now because there are 3 parties on the right, however many on the left. But frankly, this is the choice for the future. Do you want a left-wing Labour government, Andy Burnham propped up by the Palestine-loving Green Party now, it seems? Or do you want common sense, right-wing politics, people proud of our country who aren't going to apologise for stuff that happened before we were all born and get on with governing this country sensibly?
You're a Conservative politician. How does it make you feel when you see on this one bit of polling today, your party sitting on 18%, yet your party's leader, Kemi, doing really well when it comes to her personal ratings? It must be frustrating that Kemi's personal ratings are not necessarily being translated into the national polling for the Conservative Party.
Well, we're getting there. It's one poll. We had our worst defeat in 2024. Ever since then, we've been, you know, we crashed in the polls afterwards, and we're climbing. Kemi's doing the job as leader of the opposition, getting rid of Keir Starmer, exposing the Peter Scandals and stuff, and now we'll be grilling Andy Burnham on Wednesday at Prime Minister's Questions after a summer of him basically doing whatever he wants, although it seems he's just been doing TikTok. Kemi was, until Andy Burnham came in, the most popular of all the party leaders. I think that's actually important when we're talking about a multi-party world, because if you're starting to think, well, who do I not want? If you don't mind the Conservatives, if you don't mind Kemi Badenoch, then you might be leaning towards just lending them your vote to stop someone else. So, look, there is a long way till the general election. I hear people saying Andy Burnham's going to call an early one. He's not. There is no way that he's going to throw away the largest democratic mandate in Parliament that's ever been handed out. It's not going to get better for them. So there's no reason for him to call a general election because he's not going to end up with more seats. So he's going to go long, May 28, May 29 even. We've got Andy Burnham in the Labour government for years to come, unelected on a mandate that no one else stood on because he did not stand on the 2024 Labour manifesto. So let's see what happens. But no, for the Conservatives, we're ticking along. We've got our policies coming out. We're holding the government to account as the opposition. That is our job now, and the job the British public gave us in the 2024 general election. That's what we're going to keep doing.
All right, final question. Next week, apparently, we're going to see a reshuffle of the shadow cabinet. For those people who aren't too politically minded, that means Kemi Badenoch's top team, if you like, her front team, the people sent on the front bench opposite Andy Burnham and the cabinet in the chamber of the House of Commons. Some people are saying, some commentators, Matthew, that this is an opportunity for Kemi to bring some new blood into the party and maybe get rid of some people who are too associated with the last Conservative government. Do you think she needs to be quite radical with her reshuffle?
I'm not sure radical's the word. I think you want the best person for each role. That's frankly what conservatism in my mind means. If you are the best person for the role, you should get the job. There are people who are going to have to be moved on for various reasons. Not that they've done anything wrong. So Claire Coutinho, for example, is going on maternity leave. Helen Grant has announced that she's standing down at the next general election. So it makes sense to get someone in early to start learning that role. Julia Lopez, that department's been abolished. So obviously, where is she going to go? So look, I don't think it's necessarily a reshuffle where you're getting rid of sort of bad blood or people of the past. I think there's opportunity for a reshuffle and to take control of the narrative, which is what we would want to do as the opposition. But for me, the key thing of next week is Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday, actually getting to scrutinise the new Prime Minister of this country, who's had a whole summer doing TikToks, announcing every policy under the sun, not explaining where the money's coming from, though. I can tell you it'll be from our taxes. I bet you taxes are going to rise.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Wednesday will be the real first time that Andy Burnham will face proper scrutiny at the hands of Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch, of Prime Minister's questions. It'll be fascinating to watch how he responds. Matthew Goodwin-Freeman, Conservative councillor, have a good weekend. Thank you for joining us this morning here on Talk. A couple of messages quickly here off the back of what Matthew and I were chewing over. This is from Neil, who says, Duncan, if the next government is socialist and carries on the way we know it will, society will break down, and I, for one, don't want to be here when it explodes. I believe our tolerance is being pushed too far. And this is Martin, who says, please don't include the Tories being of the right of the political landscape. 14 years, and it was the most dishonest government ever. Vote reform. Get justice. I have 2 flags flying from my property and they will never be taken down, says Martin in Newark-on-Trent. Do keep your messages coming in, 0344 499 1000 for your WhatsApps, your voice notes and your calls. You can text the word talk and your comments to 87222. Next on Saturday Breakfast here at Talk, a bit of footy action. I'll catch up with Charlie White, football editor at The Sun. It's 13 minutes to 9.
Scariest moment, not that I want to admit it, but where was it? Was it in the middle of the night when somebody was by your tent? What was it that you thought, my God, I'm in trouble here?
To be honest, it was the moment where I'd been stopped. I'm running down to the beach. I'm trying to get to the water. You're so tired, and I get down to the bottom of the dunes. Next thing you know, bang. 6 coppers stopped me and this other lad, and I'm thinking, surely not. Surely not. They'd never stop any of the migrants. How all of a sudden have I run down to the beach and the 6 coppers there?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's 10 to 9, Saturday Breakfast. I'm Duncan Barkes. This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm here through until 10. Alex Phillips here from 10 o'clock this morning. In the meantime, let's bring you fully up to date with the world of football over the last 24 hours. Joining us is Charlie White, football editor at The Sun. Hello, Charlie.
Morning, how you doing?
Not too bad. Thank you for your time on this Saturday morning. So just bring us fully up to speed. Man City defeated Crystal Palace 4-1 last night at Selhurst Park.
Yeah, they did. We were all really interested how City were going to get on with life after Pep Guardiola, new manager Enzo Maresca. Well, they've had 2 wins out of 2. Relatively sort of not easy opposition, but Bournemouth and Palace is not too bad for your first 2 games. But they were good last night. Ryan Shirky got 2, Erling Haaland got 2. Encouraging performance. But the big thing for me at the moment is these transfers. I mean, it's absolutely bonkers. I mean, we thought that there'd be a few transfers. World Cup years are always a bit funny because not a lot happens till about mid-July, but this is all absolutely crazy. what's going on at the moment. And yeah, I remember when we had COVID and players were being asked to have pay cuts, and we were saying, "Oh, football's going to have a reset." Well, it's now just ridiculous, and of course, fans are paying for it, aren't they? You know, with ridiculous ticket prices. But some of these transfer fees, and our back page today at the Sun is Manchester City targeting Iliman Ndiaye at Everton, £80 million. Manchester City also in the next few days going to try and get Chelsea's Enzo Fernandez for £130 million. But that's not it. I mean, I'm looking around. There's so many other deals as well going. It's crazy.
Just for the benefit of Talk viewers and listeners who might not be too informed in the world of footy, why are these figures so crazy this time around?
I think it's just the way that the market's going, really. You know, for, some of the bigger clubs, they've got so much more money with all their Champions League cash. We've got some clubs agreeing on, lots of clubs are doing deals with each other, and to sort of get around some of the financial rules, they're basically buying players off each other for sort of, you know, inflated amounts. So some of it's creative accounting, not all of it, but some of it.
All right, and 4 games taking place today in the Premier League. Just walk us through who's playing.
I'm at Spurs today, so they've got. I can't remember who I'm watching. They're going to have Newcastle, so I need to know that when I turn up. Yeah, so Tottenham's going to be a really interesting one. They've been spending over £300 million. They've got Newcastle, who have lost loads of their team. At lunchtime, we've got Liverpool against Nottingham Forest, so that's really sort of, you know, standout one. Again, Liverpool new manager, they weren't very good last week. We've got Bournemouth Everton, and at 3 o'clock Coventry Hull. And while, you know, it may not be a standout fixture, it's going to be the first Premier League game to be staged in Coventry for 25 years. So that is going to be, I think, of all the 4, probably the best atmosphere. It's going to be great. I'm obviously not at that game, but it's been a great one to do. And for the city of Coventry, it's going to be a really proud day.
Yeah, that's a good thing to have going on. Listen, Charlie, thanks for your time this morning. Have a good day. Charlie Wyatt, football editor at The Sun, here on Talk at 7 minutes to 9. Let's turn our attention to this ongoing, I suppose it's this ongoing situation, isn't it, in this country where you think, you know, I like this country, I'm going to put up a flag. No, you can't do that. Might upset people. What is it about the United Kingdom where we have, and I used the phrase earlier, and I think I've upset a few people, but why do we have these tin pot councillors who all of a sudden, you know, go into battle to stop people putting up the flag of this country? And the latest place is Weston-super-Mare in Somerset, right? Where you've got these flags being taken down by the local council. And we had a guest on earlier who rightly just pointed out, you know, Weston-super-Mare has got some issues, okay? It's got high unemployment, people on low incomes, you've got food banks all over the place, and yet it seems the local council are more concerned about people putting up flags. What is the issue? Why is it so difficult for people to display the flag of their country in this particular country? We don't see it elsewhere. Let's get a thought on this. Joanne's in Derbyshire. Good morning.
Good morning. We've had a legal wrangle with our council, but the council lost, much to everybody's delight. In Chesterfield, there is a massive Union Jack. It's the biggest one in the world, and it costs several £1,000s.
Right. Where is it then in Chesterfield, this big Union flag?
Just head for the town hall, you will see it. It is absolutely massive.
Is it really the biggest in the world?
Massive. Yeah.
Really?
Yes, it's official in the Guinness Book of Records, which we're delighted with.
You know, I never knew that.
The town hall tried to get it took down. Oh, it's near the town hall, it's offensive. And we said, it's the national flags for crying out loud. What's your problem?
All right, so let me be clear on this so our listeners and viewers understand. So this is the world's biggest Union Jack that's flying in Chesterfield, right?
Correct.
Who's flying it?
A private businessman has put it on his building.
Okay, and the local council have been fighting. They
cannot do anything legally, and it's really wound them up big time.
Right, and have they tried? Have they tried to get him to take it down?
They tried taking him to court, and we were all like, come on, you've got to win. And yes, he won every time.
Excellent news.
And there's nothing they can do, and they hate it because it's within sight of the local town hall.
That's a great story, isn't it? And what's your feeling then? Because I'm trying to get to the bottom of this, and I genuinely don't know the answer. I spent time in the United States of America. We had someone who messaged in earlier saying I was in Turkey recently, and you see the Turkish national flag absolutely everywhere. In the USA, you see the stars and stripes absolutely everywhere. But here in Britain, it seems to be a problem for a lot of politicians, both locally and nationally, if people want to display their flag. Where do you think that mindset comes from, Joanne?
Well, I would say, as a qualified junior psychologist, they need some counselling because it's your national flag, for goodness sake.
Well, I don't think anyone will disagree with you, but what is it about Britain? This is the bit I don't get.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know. I think they've got a problem in they don't like people being proud of being British.
Let me run past you some of the points that are made in favour of removing flags. These are not my viewpoints. I'm just putting it to the test with you, Joanne, because I think I'd quite welcome your reaction. Some residents back the council's decisions to remove flags, pointing out the flags attached unevenly with cable ties look untidy, pose potential hazards and risk amplifying local social divisions during a period of heightened debate over immigration. Does any of that wash with you?
I think it's a load of total rubbish. Plain and simple.
Yeah.
We had the Olympic Games. We put up the Cross of St George for the World Cup when that was on, and that was the biggest St George in the world as well.
Yeah.
The chap in this building put that next to the Union Jack.
Yeah.
And people should be patriotic of where they live.
Yeah, because it should be about positivity, shouldn't it, flying the flag? And that's where I think it comes from. Joanne in Derbyshire, thank you. And thank you for telling us about... Can someone just find a picture of that for me? It doesn't have to go on the screen here, but I'm just genuinely interested in the world's biggest ever Union flag that I think is in Chesterfield. That's what Joanne's saying. It's been flown by a private business in sight of the town hall who have tried to have it removed legally and they've lost. And it's driving them nuts, apparently, all of these councillors, because I can see her looking out of a window. I'd love to see a picture of that. Joanne, that's a great call. Thank you. This is Margaret in Cheshire, who says, Duncan, I have a Union flag in my window for a year, and that's where it's staying. And this one is David, who's in Bristol in Norfolk, who says, Duncan, I live in a sleepy village in North Norfolk, and our parish council has a Union flag flying in the centre of the village all year round. I love to see that flag from my window every day. I'm proud to be British, and it's a sad time when our national pride is deemed a shameful action. Enjoying the show this morning. Well, David, thank you for your kind comments, and I think that's exactly right, isn't it? It's a real shame, and it's sad when our national pride is deemed some kind of shameful action by a load of politicians who say, oh no, you can't display a flag because it might upset some people. Happy to take your calls on this after 9 because I'm trying to work out the mindset behind this. 0344 499 1000 is the number. After 9 o'clock, we talk to Kate Ferguson, political editor of The Sun on Sunday, as Saturday Breakfast continues at Talk.
The Californian cash machine is out.
The ATM, the American ATM.
The American ATM has run out of dollar bills. And I think we really need to look at why they have done it and why now, because in my mind is very hasty.
This is breaking news. Meghan Markle is in talks, apparently, to return to acting with a role in Guy Ritchie's Netflix series, The Gentleman. But that would be pretty embarrassing for her, wouldn't it? Pretty humiliating.
I think it's undignified if you marry into the royal family. If you're in entertainment or something like that, actually, I think it's a very undignified thing, and I don't think that you should do it.
I think it's about money, and I think it's about position. I don't think so. I think it's sad that they're using, in a way, the children in this respect, because if this is not permanent, you shouldn't be moving kids out of schools at 5 and 7. You've got to act a bit more responsibly than that. So it looks like if they are enrolling them in the schools, it can't have happened on Sunday. It can't have been, these things, you can be Mick Jagger. You can't just ring up a school and say, I want to take my kids are joining you on such and such a day. There are procedures to enroll.
I think the kids are the answer to the whole thing. You're absolutely right, Julia. They're looking at the future. They're, as someone rather savagely described them, they're now middle-aged and not very interesting anymore. So
God, if they're middle-aged, what the hell how the hell are we still surviving?
Does anybody actually care? Does anybody... Am I the only... I do not care about Meghan and Harry. I do not care at all. Not a gnat's backside, do I? Not at all. I don't care about Meghan and Harry. I do not care about Meghan and Harry. If they walked in this room, I'd say, get out. I don't care about Meghan and Harry. Can I put that any more emphatically? I do not care. I love Angela Levin, but I don't care about Meghan and Harry, all right? It doesn't keep me awake at night. I don't wake up in the morning going, I wonder what Megs is up to. Never, ever does it cross my mind. I don't give a hoot about Meghan and Harry. Also this afternoon, Meghan and Harry have arrived in the... No, we're not going to do that, OK? I promise you. Have we made that clear?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, 3 minutes past 9. It's Talk. It's Saturday breakfast. I'm Duncan. I'm here through until 10. Just before the news, we had a great call from someone telling us, was it Joanne? I think it was Joanne, telling us about this massive Union flag on a building in Chesterfield. And I was saying a few moments ago, I've never seen this. I've just seen it on someone's laptop. We're going to try and get a picture made up so we can stick it on the screen here, because this thing is vast and it's beautiful. And the best bit about it is it's in eye line of the town hall. So all of these local councillors wanted to get rid of it, and this private business legally fought against the council, and the flag is there and it is majestic. We'll try and find you a picture inside the next 60 minutes. Very quickly, front page of this morning's newspapers, and we'll talk to Kate Ferguson, political editor of The Sun on Sunday. The Eye Weekend has this headline: Burnham bounce, Labour leapfrogs Farage in polls after he loses voters to Restore. That's fueling much of our chat this morning about the splintering on the political right here in the United Kingdom. The Sun has a royal story about Fergie coming home. This is Sarah Ferguson, the ex-wife of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, who's renting a £10,000 a week house in the home counties. The big question, where's the money coming from? Elsewhere, The Guardian has some tragic pictures coming out of Nepal as the tragedy there continues. The Times has this headline: PM warned over stupid tax raid on capital gains. This is a chap called Lord O'Neill of Gatley, who apparently Andy Burnham's been trying to court to become part of his team, but he's refused to do so far. But he's warning the Prime Minister that increasing taxes on wealth in the budget would be stupid, because it would encourage entrepreneurs to leave the country and damage economic growth. I think a 5-year-old could probably tell you that. Daily Express this morning: Burnham vows to stay out of assisted dying vote. The Telegraph has this story with this headline: America's Falklands threat to Britain. It reports that the US has threatened to oppose British sovereignty over the Falklands if Andy Burnham does not increase defence spending. We'll be talking about defence spending in a second with Kate. Daily Star this morning has just this embarrassing story. I keep saying this. Joey Essex, remember him from The Only Way is Essex? He's, how old is he? He's 36, still claiming he can't tell the time. You're an embarrassment. Daily Mirror this morning has a story about King Charles writing to the families of the 2 police officers killed in the A66 horror crash. And the FT and the Daily Mail talk about the Chancellor. This is John Healey, and apparently he's going to shelve his own target of spending 3% of Britain's GDP, gross domestic product, on defence by 2030, when he presents his first budget in October. Remember, this was the man who resigned as Defence Secretary under Keir Starmer because he had concerns there was not enough money going into defence. Curious, eh? Well, let's get a view on that at 5 minutes past 9. Kate Ferguson, political editor of The Sun on Sunday, welcome.
Good to be here.
Good to see you. I mean, what's Healey playing at?
Yes, I mean, I think fair enough, your listeners will be very confused. The last they probably heard of John Healey was when he resigned from Keir Starmer's cabinet with a blistering resignation letter, having a pop at the then PM saying he didn't have the strength to find the money needed to protect our country. Well, now John Healey has the job, really, of finding that money. And we now know that in this budget, which is coming in October, he won't. What does this tell us? It tells us that really they're kicking back the plan, so they will kick it back to next year. There's a thing called the spending review where they will go through the books and try and cut elsewhere. But we know that it's a very difficult economic time. We know that our military desperately needs many billions more. And one of the defining features, missions, arguments of this government, this new look Labour government, is whether or not they will find the money.
Can we have the honest conversation here about John Healey? Right. Is there any mileage behind the view that I was articulating early that, you know, Healey was Defence Secretary, he resigned, as you say, quite robustly by saying, not enough money for defence, not on my watch, I am off. Was this ultimately just a move, a political move, to get Starmer out of Downing Street and to get Burnham in?
Well...
Or am I being too cynical, Kate?
Look, I think if we cast our minds back to that moment, I think that Keir Starmer was very weak, very unpopular, and Andy Burnham had been on manoeuvres, obviously, for a long time. I think John Healey's resignation was seen as a really deep, big hammer blow, which helped push Keir Starmer over the edge of his premiership. I think there's no doubt about that. Why is that? It's because John Healey's seen as a very kind of loyal, quite moderate Labour figure. He's not seen as a big schemer, a big plotter. So that resignation was hugely damaging for Keir Starmer. I'm afraid I have no secret intel of whether or not he carved up this deal with Andy Burnham beforehand. Otherwise, I would have definitely written about it. But I mean, and we do know that some cabinet ministers were talking to Andy Burnham behind the scenes and had kind of carved up deals. We didn't have John Healey as the man that was doing that, but no doubt that he was rewarded by Andy Burnham for helping to end his predecessor's premiership.
But this situation regarding defence is problematic because this front page story of The Telegraph this morning talking about the US threatening to oppose British sovereignty over the Falklands if the Prime Minister does not increase defence spending. So whilst, you know, some Labour backbenchers might go, well, you know, we shouldn't increase spending on defence, you know, it's welfare, not warships, right? Globally, if we don't pay our fair way, it's going to cause a problem. Yeah,
I think there's a few things. Almost everyone concedes that we need to spend more on defence. You know, NATO fracturing, Russia on the march in Europe. We need to spend more on defence. Tories admit it, Labour admit it, and the military dot brass have been calling for it for a long time. I don't like that briefing to The Telegraph. I can imagine your listeners don't like it either. The Falkland Islands are under British sovereignty because that's what the Falkland Islanders want. And I think kind of White House briefing that they could somehow pull support for that is bullying and, quite frankly, quite ridiculous. But there are consequences for us not increasing our defence spending. You know, people are talking about the possibility of a Russia attack site. Well, Russia quite openly talking about the possibility they might send proxies in to cyber attack us. The threat posed or faced by our country today is the biggest since it's been in decades. So everyone agrees on it. Look, the real question is, can Labour do it? What are they willing to do to find the money? I suppose if I had to be if I was a betting woman, I'd say I doubt they'll hit 3% by 2030 because I just don't see them being willing to make the cuts needed. I think that they will find some more money because it just speaks to the credibility of the Chancellor. He can't stay Chancellor unless he finds more than the last bloke did.
I think you're right. It's 10 minutes past 9. I'm talking to Kate Ferguson, political editor of The Sun on Sunday. It's Saturday breakfast. It's Talk, the home of common sense. Kate, in the next several weeks, we're going to see the unedifying spectacle of a lot of quite serious criminals being released from prisons around the United Kingdom. We saw it last year. You know, these people leaving the clink, if you like, you know, popping champagne corks, being picked up in in, you know, very, very funky motor cars and stuff. And we learned this morning that BBC Sports commentator John Hunt is among the bereaved relatives asking the government to block more killers being freed under the early release scheme. This is a real headache, isn't it, for Andy Burnham?
Yeah, it's been a simmering row over the summer, but it really is about to blow up. So what's happening? They're going to be releasing hundreds of prisoners early from our jails.
Yep.
Why are the Labour government doing that? Well, they say, well, if they don't do it, we will literally run out of prison spaces and the whole criminal justice system would be at risk of collapse. Now, the big question is, who are they going to release? So over the summer, we had the row where it looked like PC Harper's killers would be released. Andy Burnham said, look, I'm going to look at the scheme again to make sure they stay in prison. And we're pretty confident they will stay in prison now. But this heartbreaking letter really just shows how unpalatable this policy is, because really bad people are going to be walking the streets early under this policy. And, you know, I'm sure your listeners will remember the awful case of John Hunt, whose family were wife and children were daughters were killed. There's lots of other victims who have also signed this letter. It's something we're going to be covering heavily in the paper tomorrow. I'm sure all our rivals will too, as we look to Tuesday, which is when the government announces who will be going early under this scheme, who will be walking free early. But I think we can be in no doubt that Brits will be less safe when this scheme kicks in October than they were before. And I would just point out that we're talking in a week where Middlesbrough is basically up in flames. And that just lays bare what happens when lawlessness comes to our streets.
Let's just spend a few more moments talking about next week, because it's significant. Parliament returns from its summer recess on Tuesday. It's Andy Burnham's first Prime Minister's Questions on Wednesday. You're getting excited already, aren't you?
It's back to school week.
It's back to school week, so you're going to see Burnham and Badenoch across the dispatch box. I mean, Wednesday's going to be a real test of his mettle, isn't it?
It's really exciting for us political watchers. So we're back Tuesday. Actually, on Tuesday, Andy Burnham is going to be it's going to be his first day, really, as a parliamentary Prime Minister. So he's had a clear run this summer, really. He's been PM for, what, about 6 weeks. Tuesday is his first day at the dispatch box as Prime Minister. He's going to be taking questions, basically introducing himself to the chamber as Prime Minister, which is kind of wild. So it'll be really interesting to see how he performs and how Kemi goes up against him. And then we have this combative PMQs, which is landing, obviously, on Wednesday at noon. And again, what we're all waiting to find out is who's able to get under each other's skin. So is Kemi able to kind of wind Burnham up so he's not just this Mr. Nice guy? Maybe he loses his rag. Maybe this whole conciliatory Prime Minister thing wears thin. Or is he able to kind of be a more tricky opponent for her compared to potentially slightly more boring, snoring Keir Starmer?
Yeah, did she get 5 or 6 questions to him? I think it's... Is it 6? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
But this is my hunch. This is my hunch. The first 2, I think she's going to be quite chummy, and then I think she's going to batter him, because I think she'll want to get her blows in quite early, just to see what he's made of. Also next week, sticking with Kemi, we know that she's going to reshuffle her shadow cabinet, I believe, which will be interesting.
Yes, I mean, actually, not to accuse my colleagues of overwriting the story, but I may have overwritten the story. So Claire Coutinho, who's one of the rising stars, or really quite risen, of the Tory party, been on the front bench for several years now, their net zero shadow, she's got mat leave coming up, and there's 1 or 2 other positions that need to be filled. So we're expecting a kind of mini shuffle, as it were, maybe some of the younger intake to be promoted to fill some of those roles. And maybe a bit of a shuffling of the decks internally. We have all been waiting for a while to see if Kemi Badenoch's going to do a big kind of almost pre-election reshuffle. And the briefing is that this isn't that. But while you're filling those posts in, I guess the interesting thing is that this chatter as to whether or not there's going to be an early election under Andy Burnham will continue over the coming months, I think. And is this part of trying to get war ready in case they are going into battle early?
OK, and finally next week, it's the Reform Conference, isn't it, on Friday and Saturday?
It is. Reform Conference, the first of the party conferences this party conference season. I will be there, as many of our colleagues will be. It's always a spectacle, a Reform Party conference. Interesting, though, you know, they've had a bad summer. No one can deny it. I mean, you pointed out one of the polls today, slightly slipping in the polls. The Clacton by-election seen as a tactical error. And Nigel, now he's back in Parliament as an MP, back with his own party conference this week. He needs to be setting the agenda, getting on the front foot, hoping for a poll bounce.
It's a reset moment, isn't it, I think?
I think so. Look, you know, there's no doubt Reform UK and Nigel Farage have totally upended politics and, you know, smashed that two-party system up. But they're starting to get ratty, defensive, not be able to, like, land their stories. And they need to be building up into what looks like a government in waiting, not just a sort of insurgent attack force. And it's this conference, I think, they need to prove they can do that if they really want to secure support at the ballot box.
Kate, always great to get your knowledge and wisdom. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Kate Ferguson, political editor of The Sun on Sunday, here on Saturday Breakfast at Talk. It's 9:15. We'll do some of your messages and calls regarding the split on the political right in this country and also why it's so difficult to display the flag of this country. We'll do that in a few moments' time. It's Talk. It's just turned 9:15.
Scariest moment, not that I want to admit it, but where was it? Was it in the middle of the night when somebody was by your tent? What was it that you thought, my God, I'm in trouble here?
To be honest, it was the moment where I'd been stopped. You know, I'm running down to the beach. I'm trying to get to the water. You know, you're so tired. And I get down to the bottom of the dunes. Next thing you know, bang. 6 coppers stop me and this other lad, and I'm thinking, surely not. You know, surely not. They never stop any of the migrants. How all of a sudden have I run down to the beach and the 6 coppers are...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, 9:19 is the time. Saturday Breakfast is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Duncan, I'm here through until 10. Alex Phillips here from 10 this morning. On the basis the trains are working. Is she in the building yet? She's in the building. She's on the cusp of being in the building. Alex here from 10. We'll do more of your messages and calls in a few moments about the right, the political right in this country and the split, and also a bit of flag stuff going on as well. In the meantime, let's get some thoughts from Ellie Hodges, political commentator, who joins us. Morning, Ellie.
Morning. Thank you for having me on.
Always a pleasure to see you and hear your thoughts. Let's start with the thing that we've been chewing over the last few hours this morning on Saturday Breakfast. This is the kind of split on the political right, if you like, in the United Kingdom. And two reasons we're talking about this. First off, there was this by-election that took place on Thursday for a seat on Dover District Council. And everyone thought it was going to be like a three-horse race between the Tories, Reform and Restore Britain. And it ended up going to a Green Party candidate. And people are going, well, you know, part of the reason for this, and it should have been Restore's really, as to rather Reform's to win, because this is Dover, the place where the illegal migrants tend to arrive and stuff. It should have been an absolute shoo-in for Reform, but because Restore stood and got 10% of the vote, it stopped Reform winning and the Greens won. So we got this split on the political right. We also have the front page of the I newspaper this morning, and it's only one poll, but it's got Labour on 27, Reform on 23, Tories on 18 and Restore on 5%. And some people are going, well, if you take that 5% that Restore have got and you bolt it onto Reform's 23%, it eclipses Labour's 27%. So we have this ongoing discussion about the political right in this country and the fact that it's split and whether they can ever work together in order to ensure we don't get another left-wing government. I mean, I'd be really interested in your assessment this morning as to where you think this is heading.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting, and this result is very telling in many ways. And I put out a tweet just saying, I want to know what Restore's objective is in this. What do they actually want? Do they want a right-wing government or not? Because, and by no means, I get loads of comments saying, oh, you're saying that Reform deserve the vote and they should have it and that everyone should vote for them, and they are kind of, everyone has kind of a privilege and they need to vote for Reform, and that's not what I'm saying at all. People can vote for whoever they want to vote for. However, if your objective is to get a right-wing government in, the sane option is to vote for Reform. And I think that I've seen on Twitter as well lots of Restore supporters coming out and saying, oh, well, this is what we need. It's okay, it's just one Green councillor. Okay, yeah, maybe it might be. But would you rather a Green councillor get in than a Reform councillor? And that's where I struggle to see where they lie in terms of their political beliefs, because surely they're closer in politics to Reform than they are to the Greens. But then when you look at Rupert Lowe's Twitter, the majority of it is just criticising Reform and not actually Labour, which I find ridiculous. So then they're kind of this whole accusation of them being an anti-Reform party and that's it is quite hard to dispute.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you and I live in the world of social media because we do it for a living. It's what we do. And whenever you float this kind of idea that Restore potentially is damaging Reform UK, you get people just saying, well, Reform don't have the right to vote, etc., etc., as you've just brilliantly outlined. And, you know, I take a view that people should have as much choice as possible in British politics, right? No one has a God-given right to think they're going to be governing the nation. However, I get this sense in this country, for me it feels, and I'm a little bit older than you, it feels like 5 to midnight. It's a phrase I keep using and people say it to me, which is we seem just so on the edge in this country and we've seen the damage that this Labour government has done so far and I believe will continue to do. And unless the right of the political spectrum in the UK somehow can find a way of working together, the next government in Downing Street will either be another Labour government or, even worse, some kind of rainbow coalition with the Greens and the Lib Dems. And frankly, I think that will be the end of Britain as we know it. And that's why we need to have this debate. What's your hunch here, Ellie? Do you think at some point common sense will prevail and we might see Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe and Kerry Badenoch somehow find a way of not necessarily merging, that's never going to happen, but agreeing some kind of electoral pact to ensure that we can keep some ghastly rainbow coalition out of Downing Street?
Unfortunately, I do not think that will happen because, especially with Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe, I mean, they absolutely hate each other. That is a real hatred they've got there, and that's from both sides. It's not, and people say, oh, okay, but Rupert Lowe put forward this proposal to Nigel about a pact. But realistically, is that ever going to happen? And when you actually look at what Rupert said in that, the majority of it was just demands of you have to do this, you have to do that for me to come back into the party or us to have some kind of electoral pact. Why would Nigel Farage do that? I think that a lot of people can see that he wouldn't ever do that because they already hate each other. Why would he then say, actually, here's the list of demands, I'm going to do all of those? For example, get rid of the Tories that have defected into his party. Yeah. Why would he do that? I mean, it's just ridiculous when you actually look at it. And by no means am I saying, I want to make clear here, I am not saying that, saying that all Restore voters are, some people say, they're all racist, all of these different things. That's not what I'm saying at all. I think there's many people that support Restore that are actually really good people, and it's a shame that they don't support Reform anymore and are going towards Restore. However, ultimately, if you are right-wing in this country and you want a right-wing government, Reform is the way to go, because they're the right-wing party that is getting the most momentum, they're the highest in the polls. I think that to vote for Restore is actually voting for, as we've seen in this instance, a Green candidate in this instance, but more you're actually splitting the vote. And in some instances that didn't happen. For example, Makerfield, I wouldn't go on air and say they split the vote in Makerfield because they didn't. But this instance they did, and ultimately I want a right-wing government, and I want a government that is going to make this country prosperous again. And I think that Reform is the way to go for that if you want a right-wing government. And I think that the way that some Restore voters have dealt with this, I've just seen posts saying, oh, okay, it's fine if there's a Green councillor that's got in because this is what we need to do to defeat Reform. And it's this whole rhetoric of just being anti-Reform instead of anything else.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday I was doing a show here at Talk and I spoke to Restore's Maria Botel, who's the head of local government. And there's a clip circulating, I mean, it's on our X feed and also on our YouTube channel as well, where I said to her, did you not accept there is a risk that if Restore Britain carry on doing what they're doing, and, the people who want to vote Restore, good luck to them, but there is a risk attached to it that you might actually stop Reform getting into government, and therefore you end up with some kind of socialist government. I said, are you prepared to take that risk? And she said, yes, we are. And it's clear to see,
Yeah, exactly. And I think you only needed around 1 in 8 Restore voters needed to have backed Reform instead for the Greens not to have won this election. And I think that's very telling. I mean, it was so close. And when you look at all of the right-wing votes put together, they would have won by an outstanding majority in this specific election. And I understand why some people think that Restore is the way to go. Maybe they think they're more right-wing than Reform or whatever it is. But if you do genuinely want a right-wing government, Reform is the way to go. And I think that in this instance, it's just shown that, Rupert Lowe says he's putting country before party. This doesn't look like that to me.
All right, Ellie, a final question, because I want to get Adrian in Wales on the air to talk about this, but you've made this point a couple of times, and I'm interested in it. If you want a genuine right-wing party, you said Reform is the way to go. Why not the Conservatives, in your view?
Well, I think that the Conservatives are never going to be able to get the same support behind them that they used to have. I think that people are fed up with the two-party system and they're fed up with the Conservatives. People on the right, the majority of people on the right, when you speak to them, maybe Kemi Badenoch, her personal popularity, we know that's quite high, but the actual Conservative Party is deeply unpopular amongst those on the right in this country. So I don't think they will ever get back to the place that they were because people feel that they were completely betrayed by the party. So why would they vote for a party that they feel didn't listen to their concerns? So I think that Reform is the only way to go if you want a right-wing government. And there are criticisms that you can have of Reform, but while saying that as well.
Political commentator Ellie Hodges, great to have you on the air this morning. Thank you. Have a great weekend. That's Ellie Hodges, political commentator here on Talk Breakfast. Talk, the home of common sense. It's almost 9:30. Adrian is in Wales. Good morning.
Good morning, Duncan.
What would you like to say, sir?
Duncan, I've got a little bit of an issue with your comment you made earlier regarding Kemi, Nigel and Rupert. Maybe they don't understand what the public's feeling if another socialist party got into government.
Yeah.
But I don't think you should include Nigel in that because if you look at the success he had in the polls over the last 12 months, the success in the council elections, still winning council seats, and you look at the membership which grows each day. I think the public do understand where Nigel's come from, and he does understand that
Well, I've never said, I never said, Adrian, that I believe that Nigel doesn't know where the public are coming from. My concern, and just to make it clear for people who didn't hear the comment earlier, so I'll repeat it, and you can also respond to it as well, which is, I do wonder whether or not Rupert Lowe, Nigel Farage and Kemi really understand that if this split on the political right in this country is not somehow sorted out, how upset and angry people will be if we get another socialist government in Downing Street. And I can include Nigel Farage in that, can't I?
Well,
it's not a criticism of him, it's a criticism of the political right in this country who seem to despise each other and not prepared to talk to each other.
But I think it's for the Conservatives, stroke Lib Dems, and Restore to come to Nigel, because Nigel, Reform Street's ahead of Restoring in the way the parties run, and the membership, and I just think...
let's just strip this down for a second, because the Lib Dems are never going to go to reform, are they? There's never going to be some kind of agreement or pact.
What I'm saying, Duncan, is it Conservative, exclamation mark, Lib Dems, because they're not a Conservative party that they used to be. We all know that. That's what I was saying. That's why I mentioned.
But I'm a little bit confused, mate. So help me out. Where do you think then the Conservatives sit in this? Because at the moment, according to one poll, they're sitting on 18%. Not enough to form a majority by any stretch of the imagination, but that is a significant bit of support when it comes to how people are intending to vote in the United Kingdom. So where do you think that's... you believe that it would be better if the Conservatives and the Lib Dems buddied up?
No, I think Conservatives act a lot of the Conservative Party MPs act like Lib Dems. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right. OK, and what does that lead you to conclude then about the Conservatives when we talk about the right of the political landscape? They shouldn't be in it?
They're weak. They're weak compared to Reform and Restore, yeah.
All right, Adrian, have a good day. Thank you. That's Adrian in Wales. I'm just going to do this message quickly. This is Tony, who says, morning, nice to see you. Nice to see you too, Tony. I think I'm getting away with it. 3.5 hours in. Alex Phillips here from 10, by the way. Duncan, I feel that Reform's main problem is Nigel Farage. He has too many political and social enemies, making Reform and Reform voters a target for titles such as racists. His baggage and legacy are not helping. People who didn't vote for Brexit but hate what's happening here, for example. He should step down for the sake of the UK, allow the right of centre parties to work together and save what Britain we have left. What do you think? Oh, blimey, I don't know. I don't think I've got enough time for me to tell you what I think. But I will make this observation, which is this. If Nigel Farage stepped down as leader of Reform UK, in my view, that party... I mean, what's this poll saying this morning? It's sitting on 23%. That party, within 6 months, would drop to about 15%, I reckon. Because he is the man behind that party. As unpalatable as it might sound for a lot of people, and I accept, a lot of movements have been made to bring in other people, to share the workload and the representation, but I think you find without Farage, Reform UK would lose a big chunk of support. That's what I think, Tony. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's 9:35. Good morning. I'm Duncan Barkes. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Some of your messages and some of your calls coming up inside the next 20 minutes here at Talk. In the meantime, let's welcome Orla Minihane, Pink Lady Extraordinaire, to the show. Good morning.
I don't know about the extraordinaire, but yes, thank you. Good morning. How are
Take
you?
it. You deserve it. And in solidarity, I'm wearing one of my favourite pink shirts here, Orla.
I would normally wear pink, but I think it was in the wash because I'm always wearing it. So nice to see you, Duncan.
Well, thank you for joining us this morning. Listen, I mean, we've just taken a call from our friend in Wales. We've had a lot of calls this morning, a lot of messages about what people are seeing as a split on the political right of the spectrum, the political spectrum here in the United Kingdom, with the Tories restore and reform. What's your take on this?
Oh, this is a complicated and very difficult conversation, but...
Let's have it. Go on.
Yeah, let's have it. So, if you look at what happened in Dover, Green got in, absolutely terrifying. But if I can give you a little bit of background to that, the people in Dover within that constituency, having spoken to them and having spoken to some of the canvassers down there, they see the Greens as the old traditional Greens, you know, the tree huggers, environmentally friendly, let's all sort of, you know, adopt a dolphin.
Are there still some of them left? I thought they were all into sectarian politics these days.
They're all lunatics, yes. But the point is that this is what these people think because they're on the, you know, they're quite sheltered. Many of them are elderly. And they think that, you know, this is what Green stands for. And there was a lot of talk about some of the green belt down there being developed. And a lot of the elderly people down there did not want that at all. So let's vote for Green. Now, the Green candidate was a GP from the local area, apparently a very nice individual, perfect. So for them, they saw that as the right thing to vote for. Yeah. Now, when one of the elderly ladies was asked, what do you think of Zach Polansky? She didn't know who Zach Polansky was.
Right.
So this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with very secular kind of politics where people don't understand the bigger picture. Now, for people like us, a Green government or even a Labour/Green government or even a left-wing government is terrifying. And for me, any prospect of another government on the left having another 5 or 6 years, whatever it may be, will result in the absolute destruction of women and girls in this country. The risk that is posed to girls and women will be off the clock. Open borders, Sharia law, all of these things that are absolutely terrifying. Now, my view is, and even though I'm within Restore, and I am very much on board with Restore's policies, I think that if there is not some kind of coalition of the right, we are finished. And I don't care what anybody says, you know, reform this, reform that. They will not win a majority on their own. Simple fact, as we stand. So whether or not Nigel and Rupert or Kemi like each other or don't like each other is irrelevant. We've got to a point now where they must put their egos aside and do what is right for the country and its people. Because if they do not, then the consequences will be absolutely unbearable.
I think, well, I agree with you, but the mood music is not good, is it? At the moment, you've got three characters there, three egos who, so far with their public utterances, kind of suggests that they've got no intention of talking to each other about finding a way forward.
And that's not good enough. That's not good enough. I'm sorry. And, you know, from me, from a theme, you know, somebody that advocates for women and girls' safety, the biggest threat to the girls and women in this country is a left-wing government. Simple. And from many standpoints, from the LGBTQ narrative to the invasion of illegal migrants, you know, all of these things to extreme Islam, these are all massive threats to women and girls. And for me, my main objective is to make sure that these girls in our girls in our country are protected. And a left-wing government will do absolutely the opposite. So for me, I don't care what their egos tell them. I don't care about what's happened in the past. Rupert reached out to Nigel, and yes, he did make demands, and people said that that was not right. But the point is, it was a starting point, and at that point, Nigel should come back and say, okay, I don't agree with X, Y, and Z, but let's talk about it like the men we are supposed to be. And they have a duty to each and every one of us in this country on the right to pull their big boy pants on and work something out.
All right, let me ask you a question, and I like your use of the term big boy pants. You know, I've known Nigel Farage for a number of years. I've interviewed Rupert Lowe twice inside the last year and a half.
Yeah.
I mean, Nigel Farage, one of our greatest political campaigners of the last 20 years, that's my view. Rupert Lowe, a very engaging, forthright man. You know, that's my assessment of both those men. Do you think they're actually capable of having a conversation and finding a way of coming together? You do. Tell me why.
I think because look, ultimately they're both sensible men. They're both grandfathers. They're both fathers. They're both patriotic British men who say that they want Britain, they want to return, either reform Britain or restore Britain. So that's what they must do. Now, ultimately, everybody falls out. Everybody falls out. I've got people that I don't like immensely. And, you know, but if I had to, and it was for the greater good, I would reach out to them. And that is what needs to happen. Now, don't forget that there is Kemi Badenoch in this.
Yep.
And she is also going up in the polls. I personally think that she's a very strong leader. She's very well liked, especially by a lot of women on the right. And she needs to be brought into the mix as well. Now, I'm not expecting them to all come together and sing Kumbaya, but what I'm expecting is that they look at the greater good and think, do you know what? We have to put aside, they don't need to like each other. They need to negotiate and work with each other. Because if they don't, we will have Zach Polanski and Andy Burnham. It is a nightmare. Yeah. It's like a nightmare waiting to happen.
Yeah, you know what really strikes me with what you said, the common ground between particularly Rupert and Nigel, and of course Kemi's a mum as well, but you said something really interesting there, Orla, which is Nigel and Rupert are both grandfathers, right?
Yes.
And their fathers, they've got daughters, and given where you come from and you're campaigning, maybe that is the starting point here for some kind of shared ground from which to build on. Orla, I'm going to leave it there. It's been a great call and a great conversation. Thank you. Orla Minihane, Pink Lady, here on Talk at 9:41. Let's get some calls on the air. Peter's in Essex. Morning, Peter.
Good morning, Duncan.
Morning, sir. What would you like to say?
I'd like to say I can't understand why people do not support Nigel. He has been fighting our corner for the last 20 years in the European Parliament and in the UK parliaments. And people do not credit him for what he has done for this country.
Well, I think people do support him. I mean, look, even in the current polling this morning, Reform's sitting on 23%. I mean, that's pretty chunky, isn't it?
Well, it is, yeah. I mean, I can't understand why the people in Dover have voted for people. I mean, the country's already in a state now that want to defund the police and turn us into a quagmire. You know, the country's falling apart. We need somebody that's going to take our side. And Nigel seems to be the only one that is interested in taking our side. All these other parties, although the Tories are now beginning to copy what Nigel says, but Labour, they are just not interested in the British public. They are only interested in migrants and the big business it's creating in this country, because migrants are the biggest business in this country.
All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room here regarding Reform UK and what appears to be the beginnings of signs that some people might vote for Restore Britain, which could damage the Reform UK vote. What's your view on Rupert Lowe's Restore Britain, Peter?
Well,
hello?
My liking is just a little bit too far right.
Right, what does that mean to you?
Well, some of the comments that he comes out with just don't ring true. I would like to see him and Nigel bury their differences and get together.
All right, I'm going to leave it there, mate. Not because you're saying stuff I don't want people to hear, simply because your mobile phone signal is a little bit iffy. But thank you. Good to talk to you, Peter in Essex. This one's in Merseyside. Andy, good morning.
Good morning to you. Nice to talk to you. My issue is that it's going to take a massive dealing with their own egos between Badenoch, Lowe and Farage to get this amalgamation done, and it's what needs to be done. Unfortunately, all three are putting themselves above what's best for the country, and in particular Rupert Lowe, unfortunately. Now, what I actually think is, unless something gets done about this, and we move towards, and it will require the three of them to do that, we're going to get nowhere. Because I agree with your last lady interviewer from the Pink Ladies. We are knackered if we have another Labour or left-wing parliament, left-wing government. And the final thing I wanted to say is the electorate needs to start holding their nose. When Trump got elected last election, a lot of people held their noses and voted for Trump. They weren't particularly happy about him, but they realised where America was going under Biden. And this is what needs to happen in this country. Hold your nose and do the patriotic thing.
Yeah, it's almost like the election slogan needs to be "Lend us your vote to save the United Kingdom."
It's something like that, yeah, because what we've got here is we are falling towards communism. Sounds dramatic, but we are falling towards that.
I don't think it is dramatic, Andy, mate. I don't think it is at all. I mean, I genuinely, it fills me with despair and fear if we end up, particularly with some kind of, and I used this phrase earlier, rainbow coalition in Downing Street made up of the Green Party, propping up Labour with a dose of the Lib Dems. I mean, if that were to happen, I just think it's the end of the United Kingdom as we've known it.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, we're going to hell in a handcart, I'm afraid.
It does feel like that. Listen, mate, have a good day. Thank you. That's Andy in Merseyside. This is Stan the man in Cheshire, whose message to say, surely Nigel, Rupert and Kemi should put their grievances to one side and form a coalition for the good of the country. I believe Nigel is being selfish and not thinking about our great country, only his own ideology, says Stan the man in Cheshire. Stephen's in Dover. Morning, Stephen.
Good morning. If I was king of this country, nobody involved in our politics would be in the Fabian Society. That is a communist regime, and it should be stopped. It's a sheep in wolf's clothing.
Yes.
Hello. And it's a sheep in wolf's clothing, and that is exactly what it is. It's a sly way of, well, it's not very sly, but it's a terrible way of taking over our country. It's communist all round.
Understood. I mean, my friend and colleague Alex Phillips has long held this view. Alex is here after 10. Just give me your view, Stephen, on the split on the political right in the UK.
I'm disappointed with Farage. I backed him in the beginning. I've sent him emails. I'm disappointed with him because of the stunt he pulled on Rupert Lowe. And Rupert Lowe, unfortunately for Farage, would make a far better Prime Minister.
When you say stunt, what do you mean?
Well, he had him arrested, didn't he?
I don't think he had him arrested. I think it was Zia Youssef who made allegations against Rupert Lowe. But
they're all of one. They're the same people. Youssef didn't do that on his own, did he?
Well, I don't know. But no, I take the point that you're making. So you think that Reform UK's general treatment of Rupert Lowe was unnecessary?
It was totally unnecessary. But, of course, Farage realised deep down that Rupert Lowe would make a better Prime Minister.
Interesting call. Stephen in Dover, thank you. We're going to squeeze in Vernon in Staffordshire. Good morning.
Duncan, good morning. You're a great orator, but I'm surprised that you are paying such attention to polls.
Well, it's one poll. You know, I made the point here, Vernon, but go on. What else would you like to say?
They're miles out, the polls are. They always are. People are not relevant at all. You know, they stand in the shopping centre. Most people walk past. Look at the numbers based upon the polling. They're not indicative of what the society is going to vote for. I mean,
okay, well that's interesting. So where do you think we stand? Well, let's just go through, you and I, because I'll enjoy this. So this one poll, and I have said repeatedly this morning, usual caveat, is one poll, but it gives us a talking point. You got Labour on 27, Reform on 23, Tories on 18. Hang on a sec, mate. Green Party on 11, Lib Dems on 10, Restore on 5. What do you think is the real representation of where people are politically in the UK?
So if you take into account that we've got an unelected Prime Minister that's enjoying a honeymoon period, I would suggest that they are no more than 16 or 17%.
Okay.
I would say that the polls are miles away.
Well, you said that, but where do the other parties exist then in the real world that you're talking about?
I would say Reform is about 30%.
Right.
I would say personally that Restore is probably near 10%.
Yeah.
And Conservatives would be between 15 and 20%. There is not a chance in hell that Labour are at 27% nationally when we take into account all parts.
Well, I don't know if I can agree with you on that, because I do think there are quite a few people in this country who have seen Andy Burnham and they go, oh, look, he's quite good on camera. He's done a nice little video about the best pub snacks. I like him. If someone asks me how I'm going to vote, I'm going to say I like Labour because, look, he's like done some nice videos about eating pork scratchings. Sadly, I think that's the world we live in.
Yeah, well, it's all about opinions. All I know, based upon fact, is that the last election, the pollings were miles out.
Yeah, no, that's a fair comment as well. And most pollsters didn't predict Brexit. Most pollsters didn't predict Trump first time round. Vernon, thank you for your call. Right, it's Talk. It's Saturday breakfast through until 10. Great event taking place today. It's called Carfest 2026. We'll find out more about it with Virgin Radio presenter Steve Denyer next.
Scariest moment, not that I want to admit it, but where was it? Was it in the middle of the night when somebody was by your tent? What was it that you thought, my God, I'm in trouble here?
To be honest, it was the moment where I'd been stopped. I'm running down to the beach. I'm trying to get to the water. You're so tired. And I get down to the bottom of the dunes. Next thing you know, bang. 6 coppers stop me and this other lad, and I'm thinking, surely not. Surely not. They never stop any of the migrants. How all of a sudden have I run down to the beach and the 6 coppers there?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, 7 minutes to 10. It's Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Duncan. It's been great looking after this show. I think it's Charlie in tomorrow morning from 6. And I'm back here Monday morning from 10, taking care of things for Julie Hartley-Brewer. Thank you for your messages. And thank you. I don't know who sent this in. This is Ian. Thank you, Ian, for taking the time and trouble to create me my own, well, in the world of radio, we would call it an ident. Listen to this.
In a world where Duncan Barkes, the rest whimper.
See, I'll take that. That's great. Thank you, Ian. Listen, a great event taking place today. It's Carfest 2026. Some great talent on stage. Loads of stuff going on. Let's get an update on this from my chum and Virgin Radio presenter, Steve Denyer. Hello, Steve.
Duncan, very good morning to you. You joined me live from Silverstone Racecourse, the home of motor racing, on the Maggots Turn. I don't know if you can see in the background, there's a circuit. We've got all the cars racing around. This is day 2 of Carfest. It's Chris Evans' wonderful festival. It's been going on for about 20 years now. And this is the biggest one we've ever done. I mean, literally, Duncan, 100,000 people will be joining us over this weekend. Today alone, I think 30,000 people are due to join in. And you can get tickets and you can come along. You can actually pay on the gate or on the door or go online, carfest.org. It's not raining, by the way. This is special effects.
All right. I mean, so this is a cracking event, isn't it, for petro heads and also pop fans as well. And I'll be honest with you, Steve, I'm well gel, as the kids might say, if you're Gen Z, because I'm looking at some of the people on the stage, and I mean, there's some absolute legends who are performing at Carfest this year, including Rick Astley, Nile Rodgers, Tom Jones, but also one of my favourite bands, the Proclaimers.
Yes, we're so looking forward to welcoming the Proclaimers here later on. They promised to do an absolute kind of classic hits set. I'm with you. That's going to be very special. Also, so Tom Jones, 83 years old. I've never seen him live. Tonight he will step out on the stage shortly after 8:30, and apparently his set is second to none. I mean, we've got one of the all-time greats coming here tonight. It really has been amazing. I mean, just in the last 24 hours, Rob Brydon, Jimmy Carr, Lee Mack I've interviewed. We've got some of the greatest authors in the world, some of the biggest stars. In fact, everywhere you look, you're like, oh my gosh, I recognise that person. Yeah. And everywhere seemingly you turn, Chris Evans is here. It's his festival. He is all over the circuit. So proud of what's happened so far. So many people coming in. There really is something great. And the cars alone, I mean, there's over 500 amazing cars on display here, some of which are racing around the circuit as I speak. You can hear the roar and the excitement from the car. I mean, this is the home of motor racing. It really is something else.
It's a remarkable place, Silverstone. Very quickly, Steve, I mentioned the Proclaimers. I'm a big fan of theirs. I love Sunshine on Leith. Great song. You mentioned Tom Jones. Who are you most looking forward to seeing perform?
I think tonight's lineup, I mean, Sophie Ellis Bextor was incredible last night, but tonight we go from James Morrison into the Sugar Babes. So the Sugar Babes, about 500 different lineups, but tonight's one is the original, so the original back in the day lineup. And then, of course, we get into Sir Tom Jones and Rick Astley tomorrow night. It's hard to kind of, I'm with you, Proclaimers, Sunshine on Leith is one of my favourite tracks of all time. I think to see that on stage here, when the sun is setting, I hope, later on over the weekend. It's going to be something else. Carfest.org, if you fancy coming down, you can get a day pass. There are tickets available. You can literally come here, buy a ticket and join us and say hello if you do.
It's going to be fantastic, Steve. Good to catch up with you. Steve Denyer, Virgin Radio presenter, live from Silverstone, the place where Carfest 2026 is taking place. Let's take a quick call. This is Pat in Suffolk. Hello, Pat.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Very well. What would you like to say?
Well, I'm absolutely dumbfounded how councillors in a certain place cannot raise the British flag. I'm an Irishman, and before anyone wants to say I'm an immigrant, I'm not. I was born on the island of Ireland, and I'm born in Northern Ireland. I'm the only one. I was born in Northern Ireland, so I've got a British passport.
Understood. What do you make of these councils who are telling people they can't fly the British flag or the English flag, the cross of St George or the Union flag?
I'm absolutely dumbfounded. Now, these councillors, whoever they are, the point I'm trying to make is they're taking the British pound under the British flag. Now, they've no problem doing that, but they don't want to raise their own flag. I cannot believe it.
Do you know, that's a brilliant point.
Absolutely amazed. Now, throw them all out, get them thrown out. And whoever's backing them, they got to go as well. Now, you live in this country. I've lived in this country for 40 years, paid it under the Queen, paid my taxes. I have no problem with a British flag. I'm delighted to see it. And I'm an Irishman, and I'm delighted to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what, you make a really good point, Pat, which is ultimately, I mean, councillors don't earn a full-time wage, but they do get expenses and stuff. They take the British pound, right, from the British taxpayer.